Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. I'm David Farkas. I'm joined, as always, by Josh Lehrer.
Hey, everybody. Good evening.
And, of course, we've got Jose Rivera producing the show and
Hello.
asking us all the good questions. So today, well, first, it's actually been a little bit since we've had an episode. If you haven't seen our last episode, which was the Leica Fact or Fiction, full of a lot of good little tidbits, and we actually did, and when I say we, I mean Jose, did actually timestamp that one.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you so much. We will be working to timestamp other videos as well. But that one you can go through with the chapter markers and check out all of your favorite Leica Fact or Fiction factoids. Today, what are we talking about, Josh?
Today's episode is all about Leica Lingo. If you've watched any of our past 40-something episodes,
A lot.
you've probably heard us toss around a lot of terms, a lot of shorthand, a lot of names and strange-sounding things, and maybe you knew what they all were, maybe you knew most of them. And so our goal today is to break through that mystery of what these words are and what they mean, and help you better communicate in the world of Leica and understand what we're rambling on about.
Yeah, and hopefully prevent just, nodding like you know what somebody's saying when you don't know what they're saying.
That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
We need to talk about stuff.
So this will kind of let you, hang with the Leica crowd, speak the same lingo, and I guess it's like a vocabulary. This is going to be a vocabulary study session, but fun.
I think so. And we've got a pretty good list, and we're going to be going through all of that tonight, but we, of course, welcome questions or comments, your favorite Leica lingo or your favorite abbreviation of something, whatever that may be. Throw it in the chat, send us an email, and we'll certainly, if we can, talk about it on air. So
For sure.
any housekeeping stuff we want to talk about first? Oh, we should talk about the workshop.
Yep.
We'll mention it again at the end of the show.
Yep.
But I believe we have one spot left for our Greenland adventure, which is...
We do.
When is that? If you want to hang out with David on the tundra, who
not-
doesn't?
July.
I don't think it's tundra. We're actually going onto the fjord. I think it's a fjord.
On a fjord. If you want to hang out with David on a fjord.
Yes.
When is it? July?
Technically it's Disco Bay, but...
July 23rd
yeah.
through 28th of this year. One spot left for Greenland.
Here,
So-
Jose, you can pop that up.
Yeah, go check it out. There
So
we go.
this is the, you can find it on the Leica Store Miami website. If you go under events and go to destination workshops, you'll see most everything is sold out, but we do have one spot left for the Greenland photo adventure. And you can check that out, but it's going to be really beautiful. Photographing by midnight sun. We ride on these beautiful red-sailed masted sailboats in the middle of the night, shooting, amazing chunks of ice and all that stuff. So you get a chance to sign up and come travel with me and Peter and take beautiful pictures with Leicas.
It's going to be awesome.
Gonna be awesome.
Yes, we'll mention it again at the end of the show for anyone who has tuned in. So I think we should get started. We're going to try to break it up kind of like lens terminology first, camera terminology second. But if you know anything about me and David, that organization will most likely fall to pieces.
Well, because there's normally a straight line goes like this.
Yes.
Our lines kind of go like and then like around, and eventually we'll get there. We will get there.
Yeah, I would say so. And as always, questions are welcome. Also, as always, we are not discussing or speculating or theorizing about when is such and such coming out because we don't know. So you can ask all those questions, but if you watch the show, we never get into that stuff because we don't know. Although we are excited for the future of Leica, we just have no idea.
For sure.
Anyway, let's start with some lens terminology. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through the nomenclature of the current and slightly past portfolio of Leica M lenses. Well, really all Leica lenses and what the names mean. I'm going to ask you, because I know what we're going to start with. So why don't you talk to us, David, about what does it mean when we have a Super-Elmar?
It's super good.
No.
Okay. Wow, we're like jumping kind of right in. I feel like the super designation maybe should come after we talk about what an Elmar is. And then we can add that
We can do it like that, yeah. So, all right.
Because there are certain modifications, like super
I
and
see what you mean.
Telyt and Apo.
So we'll start with Elmar. So what is an Elmar?
So an Elmar in Leica terminology, has historically been a lens that has a maximum aperture of f4, although there's exceptions to that.
Quite a few nowadays.
Quite a few. Most notably, recently, 3.8. Any other exceptions you can think of?
21 3.4.
3.4. Yeah.
And any lens, it's really any lens
Slower than 2.8?
slower than f2.8 and f4 or faster. Not that there's any lenses, well, there's a few lenses that are slower than f4, but nothing current. So that's what Elmar means. So if you see Elmar, you can assume it is somewhere between f2.8 and f4. That means the maximum aperture, the fastest aperture of the lens is between f2.8 and f4.
Well, and I think we just need to back up just for a second.
Yes.
Other brands, let's say notably Zeiss, okay? Because a lot of people draw this comparison. Leica and Zeiss are both German lens manufacturers. And Zeiss's terminology, which we're not going to dive into that, but their lens designations, whether it's a Tessar or a, I can't even remember.
Biogon,
Distagon, right? Those are indicative of the type of lens design, the structure of the lens elements as they're designed. So biogons tend to be like other biogons regardless of other features of the lens. Leica is not that way. Leica lens designations, and we're starting with Elmar, strictly talk about maximum aperture. That's it. So you could have two Elmars, let's say a 24 Elmar and a 90 macro Elmar, which is a little modified, but it's a macro Elmar.
Yep.
Those are not at all the same optical design. Nothing even close, nothing related. The only thing tying those two Elmars together is the maximum aperture of roughly f4. In one case, 3.8, in the other one, f4. So everyone with us so far? Elmar is slower than 2.8 up to 4.
Exactly. And some of the lens names are going to have nicknames of shorthand. I don't know if there's, I'm not aware of any shorthand for Elmar. It's a pretty short word already.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're not going to abbreviate that. We're just going to call it an Elmar.
Yes.
All right. So now we have Elmar. Let's modify, let's spice up a little bit with the Super-Elmar.
Super-Elmar.
Tell us about Super-Elmar.
Super-Elmar, so the super designation doesn't mean it's amazing. I mean, they are generally amazing, but that's not what it means.
Yeah.
Super just means wider, or I should say 21 millimeter or wider historically. So the 18 Super-Elmar and the 21 Super-Elmar come to mind. Those are ultra wides in M terminology, in Leica M system. So the super just designates how wide the focal length is, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of fits that it's wider than what the viewfinder would show.
I think that's fair to say. Maybe it supersedes the super. I don't know.
Right now, we're just making things up.
Right. So, what I'll tell you is, what we're not going to get into is why or where some of the names, okay, but like
not this one.
Our goal is to define what they mean, not where they came from.
Right.
Just to be clear.
So
that's a whole other.
The super, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
And not every 21's been a super anything.
Well, you had a Super Angulon.
Well, that's true. The Super Angulon.
Well, the Elmarit wasn't a Super Elmarit. That would have been cool.
Right.
So
the original, the 21 Elmarit aspheric 2.8 was not a super, even though it was yeah. So it's a little
weird.
I think, as Josh put it before the show, we were talking about this. Unfortunately, these are guidelines because Leica has been horribly inconsistent through the years.
Yes, and you'll see throughout this episode, you will see that. And that's one of the challenges, and one of the reasons we're doing this show is so that we can try to address how to understand what those inconsistencies are and how to, if we say something, you'll know what it is.
Maybe they've just studied the English language.
Yeah,
and that's it. I before C, except after E, whatever.
I want to go to this next kind of.
Yeah, the next one.
We want to go to 3,
right?
Right? Yeah, let's go to 3. So Elmarit. What is Elmarit?
Okay, Elmarit is the easiest one, I think.
Sumicron.
Yeah, I think so. Generally, it just means f2.8 maximum aperture.
Yeah.
Is there any exceptions?
Not without a modifier in front of
it.
Any Elmarit that I can think of, 90 Elmarit, 20 Elmarit. What's really confusing is we had the 50 Elmar, which was an f2.8. So you see, it's
right.
Yeah.
The Elmar should have been
a 2.8 Elmarit. Yeah, there isn't a 50 Elmarit by name, but there is a 52.8, a collapsible. I don't get it. 20 and 70. Yeah, I think Elmarit is safe to say is 2.8.
2.8.
Yes.
And that, but with modifiers. whether it's a
Well, you have Vario Elmarit.
Yep.
Is really the thing
like
I'm
this.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yep. Or Apo Elmarit.
Right.
Like that one
Different
over there.
thing.
Yeah. Okay. So Elmarit f2.8. Easy enough.
Yeah. All right. Next,
Moving
we're going to
along.
go to one that isn't as straightforward, which is Summarit. What is a Summarit?
Yeah, for sure. Historically, way in the past, Summarit has been f1.5, the 50 Summarit. But in modern times, post 2006, Summarit has meant not 2.8, but also not f2, somewhere in between. So 2.4 or 2.5.
Yeah. Well, the Summarit, there was one Summarit. There was the the 1.550.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it started as a screw mount lens and then ended as M mount. Then we didn't see the Summarit name again until the Summarit-M 2.5 lenses,
Yes.
35, 50, 75, 90. Then after that, we saw the S Summarits,
Or 2.4.
also 2.5s.
Oh, 2.5, yes,
right?
for the S.
Like the
Yeah,
120, 70.
70, yeah.
And then when Leica reissued the Summarit-Ms, maybe 5 years ago, or I can't even keep track, they reissued them as 2.4s.
Yes.
So really, Summarit started as 1.5,
Became 2.5.
became 2.5, and then finished off,
well,
at
it's
least
both
with an
now.
M,
It's
with an
both,
M as
right.
2.4, and then nowadays in the S line, which is the only place there are current Summarits,
Yes.
is a 2.5
Yes.
Summarit. Again, no shorthand for Summarit that I can think of. No. Or Elmarit. The next
No,
one, though.
no.
The next one has shorthand. So
The
the next
next
one
one, for
is
sure.
Summicron. What is a Summicron?
Summicron, f2, maximum aperture.
And that is consistent. I can't think
That is
of any
consistent.
Summicrons that are not
That's consistent
F2.
going back to the 1950s.
correct. Yeah, 50 cron.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and the shorthand for that is cron. C-R-O-N.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Right, so-
Summicron or just cron. So if you have a 50 cron, a 35 cron, a 28 cron, those are going to be f2.0 maximum aperture.
Correct. And that's like with the Apo SL lenses, those are Summicrons, all F2. So again, this terminology isn't specific to M lenses. It started out that way, and now it defines any lens in the Leica portfolio, whether it's point and shoot, Q, M, SL, whatever.
Yep. Sorry.
We're doing M lenses. We're generally starting with M lenses. I think someone talked about the Summarex, which is a screw mount lens.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we, I don't want to ignore the fact that there was a Leica before 1954, but in our world, we had to at a certain point decide where we were going to
the
start,
cutoff.
and that's where we start. So we don't really do screw mount. Obviously, there's other names we're not going to get to. This is really M mount and newer, and really, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the current and slightly not current portfolio, the relevant stuff that we encounter on a daily basis. Yeah. Okay, so we did Summicron, we did Summarit. Next, we have Summilux. Tell us about Summilux.
Summilux, you can think of that as being luxurious.
Is that so?
Probably. So Summilux is historically f1.4. In modern iteration, because we have the the Q line, the Q and the Q2 and the Q2 monochrome, those are f1.7 maximum aperture Summiluxes, as
And
well as the
90
Deluxe as well.
Well, the 90 Summilux is a 1.5. So
And the
these
90
days,
Summilux.
Summilux basically means faster than F2 and slower than F1. So between
0.2.
1.25.
Yeah.
Right. So between one, so basically between 1.4 and F2. But yeah, between 1.4 and 1.9999.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I know. We're really dicing it up here, but that's
It is.
But traditionally Summilux is 1.4. What's the abbreviation for Summilux?
Lux.
Yeah.
LUX.
So if you have a 50 Lux, you'll have a 50 Summilux. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay, we're making good progress.
We are.
The next one, number 7, we
have.
have a whole episode about this term, which
do.
is Noctilux. If you have not seen our Noctilux episode, it's one of my favorites. You should watch it because it was fun. But anyway, what is a Noctilux?
Noctilux is anything faster than a Summilux. How's that?
That actually is fair.
That's fair, right?
Fair to say. Yeah.
Okay. But in historical context, it's something around F1 to 1.2. And
I would say faster than 1.4.
I did.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying anything faster than
Yeah.
1.4. Yeah.
Right, because we've got, so the first Noctilux was a 51.2, which has now been reissued. You can get one. 51.2 is a Noctilux. 50 F1 of many iterations,
4.
4 iterations, is a Noctilux.
Yeah.
And in modern times, the 50.95 is a Noctilux. And also, the 75 1.25 is also a Noctilux, not a Summilux.
Correct. So The 75 Noctilux,
I feel like we could be showing these.
probably, but it's okay. The 75 Noctilux is distinct in that it is the first and only Noctilux that's not 50 millimeters.
Yes.
Will that change one day? I hope so. I've been begging for a 35 Noctilux for 15 years, but if anyone in Germany is listening, we want it. But as of right now, we have 3.5 generations of 50 Noctiluxes, 1, 2, 1, 0.95, 1, 2 again, and the 75.
That's right.
So if you hear Noctilux, and sometimes you'll call it a Noct.
Yep.
I don't call it that often. I don't know. I feel like Noctilux just flows off the tongue.
Yeah, but a lot of people call it Noct or Nocti.
Or Nocti, yeah. Most of the time it's Noctilux, but we have seen it called Noct or Nocti. So
correct. These are all correct. There is no wrong answers.
Well,
unless they're wrong.
Yeah, that's not true. All right. Next we have.
Well, we need to talk about the modifiers.
What do we have?
And also this.
We have number 8.
Yes. Well, okay. Sure.
Well,
yes.
there's only a few. Well, the last one that doesn't. Before we get to the modifiers, is Telyt. T-L-Y-T. What is Telyt?
Telyt kind of is what it sounds like, which is telephoto. So
Telyt, and not an often used term because there's only this.
No, there's only this. So this is a Telyt, an Telyt-M 135 millimeter. It's an f3.4. So you're like, oh, you mean it's an Elmar? It's like, no, it's a Telyt. So this is, if you look at the writing here, it's an Telyt-M 3.4, 135. So Telyt has been used on this M lens. It is also used historically on our lenses as well. So for instance, like the 280?
Yeah, Telyt f4 280, the Telyt 180 3.4.
Now what about in SL or S line?
No.
So even the 90 to 280 is not referred to as a Telyt.
Yeah, Telyt is one of the least used terms that's still in use in some capacity. I don't know why they don't use it that much, but no. Leica works in mysterious ways.
Not even the 180 on the S?
No.
Yeah.
That's the Elmar.
Elmar.
Yeah. It's a 3.5.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. No, it's okay.
Like we said, horribly inconsistent.
Yes, that's the challenge. Okay, so now let's get into a couple of other more specific things in the lens name. 2 words that we've definitely thrown around are WATE and MATE.
Well, those are nicknames.
Well, they're also words. We're made up words. Well, WATE is a word, and WATE is also a word, so they're not.
Yeah, but WATE is not spelled that way.
So W-A-T-E, M-A-T-E. What do they mean?
WATE, wide angle, tri-Elmar. Okay, so we're using, and by nomenclature that we were described, really it should be like a super tri-Elmar, but it's not.
Super wide angle tri-Elmar.
But it's
It should be a SWAIT.
A SWAIT.
SWAIT. But it's not. It's not.
So wide angle, tri-Elmar. Tri means it's 3 focal lengths in one. Elmar means it's an f4 maximum aperture, which it is. So it's a 16, 18, 21 millimeter f4.
This is a current lens in the product portfolio. It's the only weight. There's only one. But to say 16, 18, 21 or wide angle tri-Elmar is a lot of syllables. So we just call it a weight instead. The next.
Here, I'll just show a picture of it so people can see.
We don't actually have one on the table.
Right, but it's that.
Yeah.
Right, so 16, 18, 21, but wide angle tri-Elmar M.
And this lens, which we've talked about before, but if you watch our wide angle lens episode, but this is the only true zooming M lens.
Yes.
Meaning, even though it has detents for 16, 18, and 21, it actually functions in between, meaning you could shoot it at 17 or at...
Which means the tri nomenclature is a lie.
Well, there's 3 detents, so...
It has 3 detents, but it has infinite focal lengths in between.
Fair enough. Okay, so we talked about the weight.
Now
Tell us about the MATE.
The MATE is it's interesting because that term didn't really exist until the WATE came along.
True.
So this lens was it even current at that time or was it recent? I think it was discontinued around the same time.
Yeah.
So this is what is colloquially known as the MATE or the medium angle tri-Elmar. It was actually known as just the tri-Elmar.
Correct.
That's it.
Because there was no wide angle tri-Elmar
Right.
when the regular tri-Elmar existed.
Yes.
We only, as David said, we only call it the medium angle tri-Elmar to differentiate it contextually from the wide angle tri-Elmar.
Otherwise, they'd all just be tri-Elmars.
Correct.
So it's a 28, 35, and 50, all at f4. Again, tri, Elmar. 3 Elmars in one. Not a true zoom because it actually doesn't go 28, 35, 50. It goes 28, 50, 35. And the lens does some crazy things as you're clicking between them.
It's quite an elaborate design. If you ever
is.
get to see one, just watch the lens mount as you turn the zoom. There's all these springs and gearing. And now the Mate has 2 versions, unlike the WATE, which has 1 version, which is still current. The Mate is no longer in production. First version was E55 filter thread, no focus tab, no distance scale on the focus scale, or no hyperfocal scale.
Yeah, the lens barrel, yeah.
The version 2 was an E49 filter size. They added a focus tab, the hyperfocal scale, and the optics are the same. The optics between the 2 versions are exactly the same. The barrel was reconfigured to be a little bit more durable, although a well-serviced version 1 Mate is just as usable as a version 2.
And optically the same quality.
Exactly. And I generally, as a rule, every Mate that we get, I send to Germany and have them like go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it is so complicated.
And there's springs and
to make
cams
sure that
and-
it's like as perfect as it can get. So
And yeah, so visually, you can a version 2 Mate looks very close to a wide-angle tri-Elmar, to a WATE.
Yeah.
In terms of having that, although the depth of field scale is vastly different for a 28, 35, 50 than it is a 16, 18, 21.
yeah.
But other than that, they're both E49, and they're both very similar in terms of their construction.
Excellent. All right.
All
so
right.
let me ask you another lens term.
Yeah.
This is an easy one about Vario. What does it mean if I see Vario in front of one of these words?
Just means it's a zoom. And typically we find Varios on either on the S, on the SL, or TL lenses. Those are all Varios.
Correct. So if you have a Vario Elmar, Vario Elmarit,
This is a Vario Elmarit SL.
yeah. So that's a 2.8. Now this is they can call it a Vario Elmarit because it starts at 2.8. So
Exactly.
there is, even though it's not 2.8 across the range like the 24 to 70 is, because it has 2.8 in it, they can call it a Vario. So
Yeah.
Vario Elmarit, I mean. There you go.
Yeah, so you can see here the nomenclature. Vario Elmarit SL. It is an f2.8 at the wide end to f4, and it's a 24 to 90.
There you go.
So the Vario just indicates that it's a variable focal length lens.
Simple as that. That's like the X Vario, a camera that came out years ago. They called it the X Vario because it was an X camera with a Vario lens.
Correct.
28 to 70 on that. I
And
forget.
yet, that's also not consistent throughout their history because there was a other camera, a CM, that was not called a CM Vario, it was called a CM.
CM Zoom, yes, I know. Well,
Go figure.
We're trying to stick with like the last 15, 20 years here, so
yeah.
to keep it somewhat, maintain some sanity.
Now, there's what happens when you put some of these modifiers together.
Yeah.
So, Jose, we can get another
Well,
close-up
we
on
should
that.
wait until we cover all the words, right, before we do that?
Well, this has all the words.
Well, we haven't done ASPH yet.
We'll get there.
Okay.
So what do we see here? This is another SL lens, a 1635. But if you look at the naming of it, it's a super, meaning it's an ultra wide, Vario zoom lens, Elmar, because it's a 3.5 to 4.5 lens. So this is not an Elmarit because it doesn't start at 2.8. So super, ultra wide, Vario, zoom, Elmar, SL.
There you go.
Okay, so that is your nomenclature for this.
Sweet. All right, let me ask you about a couple more
Yes.
lens terms, and then I want to go and look at the chat, see if anybody's asked us
For
some
sure.
good stuff.
We'll take a break. Yeah.
Yes. What about ASPH? We see that engraved on lots of lenses.
Yes.
What does it mean?
Like the ones I just showed you.
There you go.
That stands, ASPH stands for aspheric, but very often is just referred to colloquially as ASPH, right? So we would call it a, what lens would you say is like referred to technically as like most of the time as ASPH?
Probably the 50 lux.
Yeah.
Just because the 50, like, it's the reason that we add these words when we talk about the lenses is because Leica has made numerous versions of 51.4s and 35.4s.
Watch our 50 millimeter episode.
over the years.
And you can see.
So as we're talking about them in conversation,
Yes.
we have to explain what we're talking about. So if I just say, hey, David, what do you think of the 50 lux? He's going to go, which one?
Right.
So I'll say, what do you think of the 50 lux ASPH?
Yes.
So he knows that I'm talking about the current aspheric 51.4.
Yeah. Or 50 lux aspheric or 50 Summilux aspheric. They all mean the same thing.
Yes.
So ASPH indicates that there is at least one aspheric lens making up the optical design. And a sphere just means that it's not a spherical or round surface across the surface of the lens. Most of the current lenses for SL, for M, the Q,
even TL.
even TL, they're almost universally now using aspheric lens elements. So it's a really good indication as well when you see ASPH on a lens, especially an M lens, that we consider those sort of the modern era lens designs. If you see ASPH, it indicates, not always, because some of them are earlier ones. Like,
Well, I think, if I can interrupt for a moment.
go for it.
There's an important thing to understand here, which is that there's not always, in fact, almost most of the time, not a correlation between the nomenclature of a lens and its performance. Even getting as far as to say apo, aspheric. So you can't always assume that the apo version is the sharpest. You generally can. You can't always.
Right.
You can't always assume that the ASPH version is the sharpest. So it's more describing what the lens is, not describing how it works. With some exceptions, and like the 35 APO-M is an exception.
Right.
And I think as Leica modernizes or continues to modernize their lens portfolio, that will become easier to differentiate.
Yes.
But looking back, I mean, the 51-2 Noctilux has a spherical elements in it.
It does indeed.
And that lens is nowhere, it's not good. It's terrible.
Well,
It's awful. It's fun.
tell me more about
From a
this.
performance standpoint, it's trash, but that's not why you use it. You use it because it's super, super cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to interrupt for a moment and
No,
say like,
that's true,
That's
right.
important to understand. Like just because it's apo or just because it's an aspheric doesn't automatically make it the best of that focal length
Right.
in the portfolio. Carry on.
It's a good rule of thumb, but it's not an absolute.
Yes, correct.
And some of the ASPH lenses, like early ones, like the 21 Elmarit aspheric, that's not as good as the Super-Elmar 21.
Well, that's all, they're both aspheric, so that's not really.
They're both aspheric. Okay, well,
I mean, 90 apo aspheric is not as sharp as the 90 macro, which is an aspheric.
which is non-aspheric.
That's the classic example.
Yeah,
I
that's a
use.
good example. Okay.
So yeah, again, you can use it somewhat, but don't make that the rule. Like, oh, this lens is ASPH, it has to be better.
Sure.
Doesn't work like that all the time.
Right.
Did we actually cover what ASPH was? Well, I guess.
Aspheric, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm going to ask you about the next one, which is.
Oh, and then there's also the longer version of that, which is aspherical. So there's aspheric and aspherical. What would you say is the difference when you see a lens refers to as aspherical versus aspheric?
Well, there's only one lens.
Yes.
There's two. Well, okay, so there's only ever been one lens where the word aspherical was actually spelled out. That was the 35 Summilux aspherical, which came two versions before the current version of the lens, the FLE, which we'll get into.
Yes.
It's called the double aspherical because it has two aspherical elements. We've talked about it in our 35 episode that has a crazy cult following, super collectible. Interestingly enough, which I don't have it here to show you, but because I forgot about it, sorry, Leica recently and very discreetly did a special edition of the FLE, not in the US, but overseas, where they wrote out aspherical on the lens. And that was only the second time they've ever done that since the double aspherical 35. So generally, traditionally, the 35-1.4 aspherical is the only lens where that word's actually written out.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the next one, which ties in.
Okay.
Two more things, and then we're going to go to questions. Two more all related.
Sure.
Tell me about APO.
APO, or sometimes referred to as APO, and sometimes just APO, stands for apochromatic. And that means that the lens is correcting the red, green, and blue wavelengths of light for chromatic aberration and spherical aberration. Basically, it just means it's more color accurate, prevents purple fringing, as well as sort of a magenta green hue shift from front focus to back focus. Josh already covered this, but as a general guideline, APO lenses tend to be higher performing, but that doesn't guarantee that they're the highest performing in that range.
Right, because APO is a specific type of correction for a certain type of aberration.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean the lens is better in any specific way other than in that one for that one thing.
Corrected for color aberration.
Right. So again, just because it's an apo doesn't mean it's the best of its range. It just means it's apochromatically corrected.
Right.
I mean-
Apo doesn't guarantee sharper
Correct. Exactly.
because it's not sharper. It just means that it's higher corrected for color aberrations.
And it's common for us to refer to lenses by the focal length and the word apo if that exists that way. For example, in the world of M50s, there's the 50 lux, which is the 51.4, and the 50 cron, which is the 50 f2. But there's another 50 cron because it's an apo lens. We just call it the 50 apo. So when I talk about the 50 apo, which is here,
Yep.
when I talk about the 50 apo, I'm talking about the 50 apo Summicron M. And I say that to differentiate it from the regular 50 cron. I could call this the 50 cron if I wanted to. I wouldn't be wrong,
So,
but
right. So see here, Apo, Summicron, M, 50 F2, aspheric. So, or ASPH. So this has Apo, this is a Summicron, it's an F2, and it's also an aspheric lens. So that is all the words there.
correct. So I call this the 50 apo, and I call the regular. You hold that up while
Yep.
you got the close up. This is also, those are both 50 f2. So I could call them both the 50 cron, but I call this the 50 cron.
Because it's just Summicron M.
Correct. And I call that the other one the 50 apo, just to differentiate between the two. So that is what apo means. All of these technologies are basically designed to keep the light hitting the right spot on the sensor and all the light waves together as opposed to splitting up.
Yeah, just as a rehash too, I just wanted to show, while I have the close up here, just kind of review. So we've got a Summilux-M 50, and this one is an ASPH. So this is a 50 Summilux, a spheric, or a 50 lux
Yeah,
ASPH.
correct.
Okay.
Last lens term, then we're going to go to questions. I promise. We're going to break it up. What about FLE?
Flea. It's not flea.
I don't
We don't like
two
that
people,
term.
two people that call it that, but I don't call it that. No,
I don't call it that either.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do? No, that's not it.
it's on one of these cameras.
There we go.
Nope,
No,
it's right there, right in front of you. You can't see.
it's on the M11. Okay. I'm gonna take the lens shade off so you can see it clearly. Okay, here we go. Now, this one's a little bit of a trick question, right? Or a trick answer, I should say. So what do we see when we look at the front of this lens? We see Summilux-M 1.4 35 ASPH. And yet, this lens is designated or called commonly a 35 FLE. And yet, the letters FLE are nowhere to be found on this in the name. So why do we call it that, Josh?
Well, because when the 3514 aspheric was replaced by this, this was called the 3514 aspheric. So there was no way to clearly differentiate the two lenses in conversation or in some kind of communication. But one of the major design changes to this version was the addition of a floating lens element. So
FLE.
exactly.
Floating
So we
lens
call
element.
it the 35 FLE because that denotes that. Interestingly,
A lot of lenses have floating lens elements.
but that special edition 3514 that has a spherical on it also
Yes.
has FLE written on it. So even Leica has
Interesting.
finally acknowledged that people
Right.
call it the FLE because when the lens came out,
Yeah.
there was a lot of confusion. People would go, wait, but it doesn't say FLE on it. I'm like,
Exactly.
that's right, because it's not actually officially called the FLE. It's just called the 35 Summilux ASPH.
Right. Now, there is a lot of lenses that are designed with FLEs or floating lens elements. We don't typically call it as part of the name FLE because we're not trying to differentiate it from something that came previously with the same name.
Correct.
So it's a little bit confusing of why we would call it that, but we very often just refer to this as the 50 lux FLE,
The 35 Lux FLE.
the 35 lux FLE.
When we never
Sorry,
call it the 50 Lux FLE.
I'm looking at
FLE.
these 50s. Yes,
But
the
so
35
tell me
lux FLE.
what is an FLE? What is a floating lens element?
So in a, let's say in a classic lens design like a 50 Summicron classic, okay, this is not a spheric, this is not apo, this is not anything. This is perhaps the simplest lens design of any of the Leica lenses on this table. This is what's called just a double Gauss design. So it's got 3 curved elements going forward and 3 curved elements going backwards and the aperture in the middle. When you turn the lens, and if I could get a close up, Jose. When I turn the focus, you'll notice what happens to the front element. It moves, but it's not just the front element. It's actually those 3 elements together are moving apart from the back elements. And that is what's known as a total focusing design. So everything's moving all at once. And historically, a total focusing lens design like this would have to be optimized for either close focus or infinity, or some distance in between. And some manufacturers were known for calibrating to infinity and optimizing for that. Other manufacturers somewhere else in the middle. And lens by lens even. So historically, macro lenses were optimized for the close focus range, clearly. Portrait lenses were optimized for the close focus range. And landscape-oriented lenses were optimized for infinity, etc. So you could see they had to make these choices when they were designing the lenses about where that optimal performance would lie. With a floating lens element, like in the 35 Summilux, not that we can see inside the lens, but basically you have the main focusing group is moving, but a floating lens element is moving at a different rate relative to the other focusing elements. And what that does is allows it to correct and optimize performance across the full range from close-up at 0.7 meters all the way to infinity. And it optimizes that performance across the whole focus range. Leica has rolled this out for a large majority of the lenses that are on this table right here, but none of them are really referred to as FLE.
Right, because that was, again, that was the big change from the previous version to the current version was the addition. I mean, a bunch of things changed, but in addition, the floating lens element was sort of the headliner, and that's how we differentiate between the two. So if we ever throw around, we say, oh, we shot it with the FLE, we're talking about the current version of the 35 Summilux ASPH.
Yes.
Let's take a break from our current list to poke around some of the questions people have asked.
Jose, I'm sure you've been checking out.
He's been copying them. Let's scroll down so I can see, and I'll.
Oh, in here.
Yeah, he's been scroll down. I like number 45. Oh, Jose, ask me that question because I like that.
That's not related to lenses.
No, but I like it anyway.
You want to start maybe with the 46?
No, fine.
Sure. That's that.
Right,
yeah, ask Josh that.
Okay. All right. What's the difference between Lux 1.7 on the Q2 and M Lux 1.4?
Well, 0.3. The lens on the Q, the lens on the Q is called the Summilux because it is faster than f2 and slower than, and not faster. So between 1.4 and f2, they didn't need to do anything with Summilux before this that wasn't a 1.4. When the Q2 came out and it was 1.7, they had to either come up with a new name, which would have been even more confusing.
Right, and if you hand me the Q, I'll demonstrate why.
Yeah.
How much bigger do you want this lens?
Yeah.
Because if this was going to be a 1.4 lens,
Huge.
it would be massively large and it wouldn't fit into this kind of compact package.
Correct.
And I think Leica made the determination they wanted something that was faster than f2, so they didn't want to make a 28 Summicron. So they were like, okay, well, we can make it half a stop faster, and why don't we just call it a Summilux?
There we go. So now Summilux isn't just 1.4, Summilux is between 1.4 and f2.
And remember what we said when we were talking about that. Summilux doesn't talk about the quality of a lens relative to any other lens.
Correct.
A Summilux isn't guaranteed to be better than a Summicron or an Elmar. It just denotes the maximum aperture.
Here we go. Does the Thambar have an ASPH lens element? I don't think so. I'd have to look at the diagram. They don't call it.
Well, why don't we talk about the 47, Jose?
Yeah. Okay, ask David that one.
Okay. Why do some Apple design lenses, like the 50 Lux spherical, don't get the Apple label? Are there different levels of Apple-ness?
Yes,
there are. So that's a astute.
You've talked about it on the show. So.
We have talked about it on the show, and I've talked about it in the past in for instance, an interview with Peter Carba, where he said that the 50 Summilux aspheric was, or shares the same lens design as or I should say the other way around, the 75 Apo Summicron 75 aspheric shares the same optical design as the 50 Summilux aspheric. And my question to Peter Carba, head of optics, was, but why is the 75 an Apo and the 50 Summilux is not an Apo? And he said, it is an Apo. We just didn't write it on there because we thought it was silly. Historically speaking, this comes back to that sort of wishy-washy changing with the times Leica, where the nomenclature is not consistent. But historically, apo lenses, or the apo designation, was reserved for telephotos because it was believed that telephoto lenses suffered the worst from chromatic aberration and spherical aberration, more so than wide-angle lenses, which would be, I don't know, more subject to barrel distortion than they were chromatic aberration. So apo designations were for 75s and 90s and 180s and 280s and 400s and 560s, not for 50s, and certainly not for anything wider. Well, they've changed their tune on that because when in 2012, when they came out with the 50 apo Summicron, that changed the whole naming scheme. And now you see, for instance, the SL Summicron line. They're all apo Summicrons, 28, 35, 50, 75, 90, soon to be also 21 and 24.
Well, soon is relative, but...
Soon is relative, but soon, they have said, that there'll be an apo Summicron 21 millimeter SL.
Are they going to call it a super apo? That would be cool. They're not, but
That would be cool.
super apo.
Would be cool.
But no.
So there's an inconsistency in the naming. They didn't call it an apo because they just didn't see the need, and it didn't really conform with the current naming scheme.
Apo Summilux doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It could, though.
Apo Summilux. Apo, I don't know.
Apple?
Apple Summilux? Yeah.
Apple Summilux.
It sounds wrong. So, okay, I think that's enough lens talk for now. What I'd like to talk about is...
Just one question left there.
Which one?
45?
Oh, but it's not about lenses, so I thought we didn't want to ask me. We'll get to it later.
Later? Okay.
I want to talk about colors. Pretty colors. Well, really just two colors.
Okay.
There are...
Is Leica going to make a Tiffany blue camera?
Oh, don't start. It'll be $1 million. Yeah. And that would actually... Now you're thinking about it. Anyway, I would like a double-signed...
Yep.
Leica. Leica's terminology for the finish of their products has had some variations over the years. And it's kind of specifically talking about cameras here, but some M lenses as well. There are some subsets of each, because generally lenses and cameras are black or silver, and that's pretty straightforward. Now we've had steel gray and titanium gray and white and red, blue, but
Olive.
an olive,
Yeah,
safari,
yeah.
so many. But what I want to talk about is explaining a little bit further about the different variations within the black finishes and the silver finishes.
sure.
So the way that I'm going to do that is I actually have one of the cool parts about M's up until now is you have removable base plates, which means I have a little mini swatch, if you will, of the color sampling. So the first black M's were black paint. Now, black paint is sort of the most Leica-y finish. It's got
Leica-esque.
And black paint basically means, well, traditionally meant black painted brass, although Leica has done black paint aluminum lenses.
Certainly, we've got some
as well.
240 there on the base plate, for sure.
Yes, so if we look at the base plate of this 240, you can see the black paint is starting to wear away. Now, in the world of Leica, all black paint is not created equal. And what I mean...
We should actually talk about that for a second. That is also, I would say, a Leica terminology of a lot of people might refer to cameras as being brassed or having brassing.
Oh, yeah.
You should definitely
Right, so that's what that means. But let me stick with this for a second. Now, the way I'm going to show this is like so. Let's see if we can get this to work, if I can get it to catch the light just right. Bear with me here. So what I'm holding up here are two base plates. There you can see it. These both belong on cameras that are called black paint. That's better. Now, you'll notice the base plate on top is quite shiny. It has like a mirror finish. And the base plate on the bottom is a little bit more matte. The bottom base plate is actually from an M9, which is a black painted brass. And the top one is from an MP film camera, which is also black painted brass. So when I say black paint is not created equal, that is what I'm talking about. I like to call this top one black lacquer because it really reflects the mirror finish better. Reflects, that's a mirror pun. That's not what I meant. I think it describes the mirror finish better. Again, what I'm holding up here are two base plates, both that are called black paint, but they are not the same. You can go back to me, Jose. So in the world of Leica special editions, Leica collectibles, the black lacquer, again, kind of colloquially called black lacquer, is far more desirable. The black paint M10R is a recent example, black paint MP, the Elmarit and Andy Summers editions of the 246 monochromes, all black paint, meaning the black lacquer. So it's like a mirrored.
And so is this, technically.
Well, we're getting there. Not the camera. Well,
Oh, not this. Sorry. No, this one. Sorry. Technically.
Yes. So we have, well, this they just call this one black.
Well, it was going to be
But
called.
the M11, to make it even more confusing, the M11 is also painted black.
Yes.
It's aluminum, not brass, and it's not glossy. So I don't call it black paint. Leica doesn't call it black paint. They just call it the black finish, but it is
Thankfully.
actually paint. But in terms of what we traditionally consider black paint, you have the black lacquer paint, which is shiny, very delicate, scratch prone, that you see on MPs, vintage collectibles, certain lenses. And then you have black paint that's less glossy that we see on the M240, the M9, the M8.2, and a few other things scattered around. So that's black paint and black paint. Now,
Wait.
yes,
But
black
also-
paint and
but
black
also
paint.
black paint?
Yes, exactly. Not
okay.
all black paint is created equal. Now, what's easier to see the difference is what Leica calls black chrome.
Yes.
Black chrome, which we saw on the 246 monochrome, on the M8, on the M10, all the monochromes actually, is a matte black finish. So it doesn't have a luster to it. So if I hold up same finish for comparisons purposes, let's see. Here we go. You can get that close up. So again, here's our black paint on the top and black chrome on the bottom. You can see it's much more matte, much less reflective, and it has a slight texture to it. You can't quite see it on the camera here. If I can get the focus. There we go.
Well, you could just show the M10R.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show the comparison.
Yeah,
so you can see, so the bottom is black chrome, the top is black paint. Huge, massive difference. Let me just keep the close up here and say. This is an M10R. Everybody knows what that is. That is black chrome. So you can see it has a not very reflective.
It
matte
still
black.
has a sheen to it. For
It has,
sure.
yeah. It has, a coating on it, but it's not got a brass. When black chrome wears, you just see a little bit of gray or dark metal underneath.
Silvering.
Silvering.
Yeah, so it turns a little bit shiny and silver on the edges rather than like on the black painted versions where they get that brass coming through.
Correct. So we have black lacquer paint or black paint traditional, and then black paint in the modern sense. We have black chrome. We also have the black finish on the M11, and the last finish that sort of sits in between all this is what I tend to call black anodized, which is the lenses. That's reserved for lenses, not the cameras.
And that's easy to show.
So yeah, any M lens that's in black like this is the 135 is black anodized. This more closely matches black paint, but not the black lacquer paint.
Right. And there is lenses that are special ones that are in
Yes,
black
Leica
lacquer.
has done black lacquer paint lenses, and they've also done a couple of black chrome lenses. The 51.4 black chrome, 50 Apple black chrome are the two that I can think of off the top of my head. So the black anodized M lenses, which again is the majority of M lenses in the current portfolio, are the closest match to the black paint we saw on the M240 and on the M9. They're not as lustrous as the black paint lacquer we see on the MP and some special editions. So that is the black anodized. So that's all the different black finishes. Now, silver is a little bit easier. So there's really only two. There's silver chrome and silver anodized. Silver chrome is brass. Silver anodized is aluminum. Unlike the finishes in black, the differences in visually between silver chrome and silver anodized are nominal.
They're minimal.
There are differences. They're slightly different in their sheen, but they're not that dramatic. Leica has done M lenses in both silver chrome, meaning they're brass, and silver anodized, meaning they're aluminum. Traditionally, the silver lenses all wore silver chrome, meaning they were considerably heavier than their black anodized counterpart. Leica, in the last 5-6 years, has been reissuing a lot of their lenses that come in silver to become silver anodized, which means they're aluminum and they weigh exactly the same as their brass counterparts. So here are two lenses, if I can get the fronts. The lens on the Here we go. We can get the close up. This lens here is a 90 Summarit in silver anodized, meaning this barrel is aluminum and anodized silver. And this is a 50 Summilux in silver chrome, meaning it is brass. It's quite heavy. I can feel it. But you can see there's not, I'm trying to like catch the light, there's not that much of a difference in the finish. The silver anodized is maybe a little bit smoother, like a little bit less texture. It's very, 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 very close. So close that I would say it's negligible. And I would have no concerns about the finish matching if I were to put a silver chrome lens or a silver anodized lens on a silver chrome camera body. You can come back to me, Jose.
And I think that's the point.
That's the rub here, yeah.
The first time they were able to do the silver anodized lens was a limited run of 500 lenses of the 28 Summicron.
Yeah, I think I showed that, right? In the last show?
Maybe.
I think so. Now, what's interesting about the M11 specifically is that because the M11 in black, the black finish is aluminum, it is not black chrome. The M11 in silver is brass and it is silver chrome in the traditional sense. So you can see that there. So generally the differentiator, you can say silver chrome means brass, silver anodized means aluminum. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot.
I think so.
But it's important to know the differences because if you're trying to either cosmetically match something or understand a limited edition release or something in the past, you want to be able to differentiate between the black paint, like the lacquer finish, like on the MP, and the black paint of like an M240, et cetera, et cetera. So
now there's also the really ultra matte black that they used on the.
We've seen three products like that. So it started with the M246 Stealth, which was a very, very, very matte finish, more matte, considerably more matte than black chrome. Then we saw the QP, which again was a matte finish. And I have an article on Red Dot Forum about that where I took a really bad like direct flash photo to show.
Yeah.
And then we saw it finally on the 28th Summaron matte black edition, which was also like a matte black paint. So it wasn't black chrome, it was actually black paint. Really interesting. That is very, very rare. It's one of the rarest finishes is what I would call the matte black because they really only done it 3 times. It's cool, but it's not as durable. It is more scratch prone. So I see why they don't use it on more stuff. It's really more for stuff that's like special.
Yeah.
That was a long explanation.
I think
a lot of finishes. I think I got it all. I think I got it all. So that is the colors in the world of Leica, other than all the other ones.
As long as the colors are black or silver.
Exactly.
You forgot silver paint.
What?
Silver paint.
Nope.
Silver paint? I don't think there is any silver paint.
Not that I can think of.
There's titanium paint.
Yeah, titanium finish.
Titanium colored paint.
Like the Q titanium.
I'm sure some accessories are probably painted silver, but not the cameras.
No, I mean like this. This isn't.
That's not. That's brass.
I was kidding. No silver paint.
Oh, okay.
You're messing with us.
Trying to get us to go. All right.
What did we miss in the chat as I was rambling on about colors?
All right, let's see. Well, we just got a question came in there. It has to do with lenses but it's
okay. Fire away.
Yeah. All right. So, what is the difference between the Summilux-M 21mm 1.4 spherical versus Leica M 0.8 Summilux M 21mm cine lens?
Yep. You can talk about that.
Yeah. So the M 0.8, they're technically not Leica lenses from Leica camera. They are the same optical design as the Leica lenses, the mainstay M lenses. So they're based on M lenses, but Light's Cine has taken those and rebarreled them. So they have larger sort of, I can't even call it a hood.
The barrels are the same, actually. Didn't we just discover this?
Well, the barrel, yeah, but the front of the lens, they have these kind of specialized hoods that are designed to interface with matte boxes for cine use.
Yeah.
And then they have geared apertures and geared focus rings. And the gearing is the pitch of, it's an M 0.8 industry standard cine pitch. So for a focus motor or, a remote control motor. They're really for cine use, and they've also removed the click stops in the aperture. And that's about it. There's no optical difference between the lenses.
Say that again.
There's no optical difference between the regular M-mount Leica lenses and the Light Cine M0.8 versions.
Okay.
You're not going to get a more cinematic look with the M0.8 lens.
Exactly the same.
It's just going to be easier to use in a cine rig.
Yes.
For remote focus and matte box use and etc.
So video versus photo, basically.
It's the same.
Exactly.
It's the same.
Good question, though.
What about hammer tone finish?
Paint.
Oh,
It's like a special process. I feel like it's more elaborate than that. But I've seen hammertone wear, and it does wear like paint.
I feel like it's an enamel.
Maybe.
I think hammertone's an enamel, technically.
Maybe it depends on what it is. Hammertone is a very, very, very rare finish. So I can only think of a handful.
There's an LHSA hammertone edition.
Yeah.
MP.
Yes. Beautiful. Amazing. I know someone who's probably watching that has one. Right
I know.
now. Maybe he'll let it to us for another show.
Okay.
Super, super cool. Yes. What else have we missed before we get into our list again?
What is the SL black called on the
This?
SL cameras?
Like, this is black anodized.
This would be black anodized because that's aluminum.
Yeah.
So that's not black paint. That is.
Here,
This
you
is
can
a
get
very,
close up.
very close match to the black anodized M lenses because it's the same color and the same material.
Well, you can see this lens is black anodized.
Yeah. If I hold up an M lens to it,
Going to be the same as the SL
This is
lens.
very bad, but this is exactly the same. Yeah. Good question though. That's why there's no silver chrome SL because they'd have to rebody it in brass.
Right, and you can see here what the wear looks like because this is my camera, and you'll see that basically the bare metal is coming through eventually. That just means it's used.
That's right. That's what it's made for.
Do you drop that in Iceland or no?
I did not.
No? Okay.
For
I
once.
didn't drop anything in Iceland.
Proud of you, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. What's next, Jose?
All right. So the other question that we had was not lens related specifically, but
Okay.
you want to jump to that?
Well,
and-
ask that question because then I'm going to.
Okay.
It's about
Is that a
9
good-
o'clock. I'm going to show something special,
Okay.
which will be a good break, and then I'm going to start bugging you with camera questions.
Okay.
How's that?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. What does the expression reasonably priced mean in Leica talk?
I'm gonna let you answer.
Oh, that's great. Well, obviously,
Tag.
reasonably priced, if we're talking about is something reasonably priced for a specific individual, is obviously dependent on that person's budget. Everyone's budget's different. In my mind, I'm pointing here, my mind is here, I think.
Is it?
Maybe. In my mind, reasonably priced to me is about cost of ownership. So for example, if you bought a pre-owned Leica Q Type 116 in 2018, when they were selling for like, or excuse me, 2019, when they were selling for like $2,800 to $3,000, and you kept it until today when they're worth, and you kept it nice when they're worth $3,200 to $3,500, well, the cost of ownership was in your favor, several $100s. So is that $2,800 in 2018-19 reasonably priced? I think so, because you didn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
Even if you forget about appreciation, let's just say you sold it for the same, it cost you nothing. So to me,
It's opportunity cost.
exactly. Now, obviously, it's hard to predict what pieces will go up and what pieces will go down. But in the grand scheme of the world of Leica, things tend to have their initial depreciation and they flatten out, and then sometimes they creep up a little bit over time. M8 is a great example. They were $500, $700, $800 for years, and now they're $2,000 plus because people are realizing, wait, it's actually a really good camera given the limitations. So to me, obviously, reasonably priced is relative. I would say it depends if we're going to get down that rabbit hole.
Well, or you could certainly look at SL lenses because this is let's say more contemporary current offering. You can't go and buy an original Q. You can't buy an original M8.
Right.
Maybe you can, but you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But you can buy a 16 to 35. But the used price of 16 to 35 is what, maybe 10% less than a new one?
Yeah, but it depends on warranty status and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do not depreciate that much because they're really, really good and really, really relevant. And so that keeps them, it's not like Leica's pumping out 50,000 of these a year. It's a small, low production. So yeah, that is really, reasonably priced again is all relative. But on that note, as I love to do show and tell.
No, never.
Never happened. So I'm a huge Leica geek for a lot of things, and everyone knows I love rare pieces, I love collectible pieces, but sometimes I get a piece that isn't special because of an inherent rarity, although it may be uncommon. It isn't special because of its limited edition or whatever, but simply by its state. What I mean is, show you. Here, I have a lens I was extremely excited to get my hands on recently. Now, we talked about the Noctilux. Here we go. Let me show that. This is a version 4 f1 Noctilux. Now, if you've watched our Noctilux show, you know this is the last version of the f1 Noctilux made up until 2007, 2008. Now, we get these every now and then. You can come back to me. We get these every now and then, so it's not like it's insanely rare to see an f1 Noctilux. The thing is, these lenses have been around for a long time. And when they were current, they were just lenses people used. So to see them, you see them with maybe a case, maybe with caps, maybe the box if it's an older white box, but it's rare to see more than that. Now, what makes this particular version special is not only is it a version 4, so it's the very, very latest of the F1s. This lens comes in a silver box, which is extremely unusual. That means it's really the last like 5-6 years of Noctilux production.
Less than that even.
To see it in a silver box, because most of the boxes in this period before this were white, the older style. This is a modern style box. But the best part about this lens is what it comes with, which is literally everything. So just kind of take it out here. Original test certificate. We can do a close up, right, Jose?
You can focus, yeah.
Original warranty card, hold on, with the serial number of the lens on it. I mean, the fact that somebody kept this, we have test certificate, we have the instruction manual, we have the original case with...
See, that's interesting. I just want to stop you for a second.
Yes.
What's really fascinating to me
Yes.
is that this is the modern era, warranty card and modern era instruction booklet.
Yes.
With the prior era...
Because this is a transitionary period for Leica.
Yeah, so having both this white piece of paper was indicative of like pre-modern era, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that it has both. And this is the old logo, that they don't use anymore.
That is funny.
Yeah.
So all the original paperwork, the original case, and of course the best part of all, aside from the fact that it has everything, is the lens is perfect. I forget who traded this in, but I guess they didn't really use it because this is a gem. I'm gonna get the close up here. Can we do that, Jose? Look at this. Look at this. Flawless. Now, I sent this lens to Germany, to Wetzlar, where it was given a full overhaul and it was 6-bit coated. So this lens is not only beautiful and complete, but actually quite usable as well now that it's been 6-bit coated. Super perfectly calibrated and everything. Look at the glass. Hold on. Oof. Gorgeous. So this, to me, is a lens that, no pun intended, checks all the boxes because it's perfect, it's been overhauled at the factory, and it is complete the way it came new. Silver box, all the paperwork, very, very late production for a lens, of course, you can't get anymore. You can come back to me. So this has been my favorite acquisition as of late. To see something like this is special.
Yeah,
Again,
I saw there was a comment.
Yes.
They were asking about the last 100. This is not one of the last 100.
No, that came in a humidor and a giant, huge collaboration. Those things were made to be collectible, which means most people kept the boxes.
This was a made to be used.
These were made to be used. So to see it this complete in this kind of condition is extremely unusual because they weren't made with collectability in mind. They were just lenses designed to be used.
I mean, I'd estimate that, like 2004, and then it was discontinued
This is
in 2002.
This is 2002.
Oh, 2002,
yeah.
okay.
This is one of the first years of the silver box. So this is the less than 10 years before they stopped making them.
Well, they stopped making them in 2006?
2008, I think. 2007, 2008.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's hard. The thing is, it's
Production, like,
if you're just
fell
going based on
off a
serial
cliff,
numbers,
yeah.
they may have made them for a short period of time and then sold them through.
Right.
Because it's hard to differentiate between when it was actually produced and when the last one was sold by a dealer to a person.
Yeah.
This lens was probably sold much later than 2002, and somebody just kept it and barely used it.
Sure.
So it's on our website if you want to check out. I wrote up a little story about it, and there's pictures and everything. Jose, maybe you can drop it in the chat. And of course, it does come with all the service paperwork as well, just separately. Anyway, so I like to show. I've been trying to do this more because there's there's just a lack of like love, I think, sometimes for stuff on the website.
Yeah.
And is it gone already? Yeah. Well, you can't have it if anybody wants it. Somebody's gonna get it. And when you see something like this on a static page, it's hard to really know why it's so special.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I wrote up my own description instead of just using one of our more generic ones, just because it is so special. So anyway, that's my 9 o'clock tangent for the evening. Now
That's the being a nerd.
yes,
Being like a nerd.
being a huge nerd. So now why don't we actually get onto the topic of the show?
Back on topic. Jose, has anything else come in while we're rambling on?
Me was mostly rambling,
While Josh is rambling on?
Let's see. Safari and reporter finish.
They are almost exactly the same, funny enough. I've actually put M10P Safari, M10P Reporter next to each other. Very, 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 very close. The leather, or not the body coverings are different, and the cosmetics are a little different. But in terms of the actual color,
That olive green.
they're like 96% the same.
There is actually a different, like that brown paint. The Lenny Kravitz was like a brown paint.
Yeah, there's
There's exceptions,
olive,
yeah.
safari,
The white,
reporter, brown, white,
Yeah.
red,
gray?
red,
The gray? Gray for the Ghost
bold,
Edition?
There's the M10P bold gray, M10P Ghost Edition,
Yeah.
M10P White Edition. I mean, I'm not going to keep going, but needless to say, stainless steel, titanium. Leica has gone bananas over the years with all kinds of super cool special editions.
And maybe
unique
one of the
colors.
most limited was, and they didn't do it for a camera, but for lens, they did the red
They
anodized.
did 262 in red.
Oh, they did do it. Yeah. That's right. Wow,
So
yeah.
They've
done everything. They've done
There have
everything.
been a bevy of interesting colors. If you want something cool, you should pull it up because it's super, super cool.
What's that?
Search for 246 Historica. So just monochrome 246 Historica. Or yeah, that'll do it. Historic. Yeah, that one. Super cool. You can even see it on our own site. We've sold one. Just do image search. This was and now I promise I'm going to stop rambling.
Oh, wow.
A special edition 246 monochrome. The only way you could have gotten one in silver chrome.
This one?
Yeah, you can even.
Hold on. Is this it?
No,
No, that's not
that
it.
just came out. That one.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to get a picture of it.
Just pull it to front. That's fine. That's good enough. Just go quick computer quickly. That looks
So
great.
small.
Silver chrome 246 monochrome with
Magnify and enhance.
blue leather. How cool is that? That's insane. That they never even sold them in the U.S. They made like 40 of them and they sell them only in Germany. But anyway, if we could do a whole episode on the colors of Leica, maybe we'll do that one day. That would be really, really interesting because I've talked way too much about it. So please get me off of this topic, Jose, and ask David a question.
Don't really have any more questions unless we get into.
No, I mean our list. Go to the list.
Oh, from the list. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, so okay. Somebody did ask about Thambar. If it actually stands, what does it actually mean?
I don't think it means anything. But Thambar was.
Somebody was at the beach in a sandbar, but they had like a
Please
really
don't.
sour.
Please don't.
So like I'm at the sandbar like that.
No.
What they said? No?
Their tongue was.
Yeah, they had like
swollen, right?
they got stung by a jellyfish in their tongue.
Right. That's not. Don't.
That's the
please
official
don't.
backstory.
No,
Jim
that's not
Lager,
it.
put it in your book.
So the Thambar was an interesting case because historically, Leica has always tried to make really sharp, really high contrast, high resolving, high micro contrast lenses. And the Thambar was them purposely not doing any of those things and making a very soft focus, pleasing, painterly portrait lens where they were introducing aberrations that they normally would get rid of. So the Thambar, the original Thambar from what,
30s?
1935, 37 or something? I don't know.
It's not right now.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It was, it was a soft focus portrait lens. And Leica had reissued it recently in the last few years. They had the 90 Thambar. But I can't think of other Thambars.
No, there's only the original and the reissue.
Yeah, that's
That was
it.
That was
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So
We got to get on
it
cameras.
doesn't mean anything. It just
got to get
means
on
whatever.
cameras.
Cameras.
Pull,
Okay,
pull
go.
up the list. David, pull up the list.
Cameras, okay.
I'll scroll up. Okay, we stopped at 17. Yeah, just start with 17.
Okay.
Why don't you just go, David? Do it.
Just go. Just do
go.
it. Fine.
Okay.
M.
Okay. So M.
What is M, David? What
Where-
does M mean?
Well,
both
here.
literally and spiritually.
Spiritually. Well, I like having this one here because it's the only M that actually has just an M on it. Here. M. Where is it? Over there. There's Jose. Okay.
There we go.
Right there. Got it? Okay. M. So this is also an interesting one. This is an M type 240, which we are going to talk about type numbers. And this is kind of an anomaly because there is no other camera that just had M on it, right? Everything else prior, like M7, M6, always had the number designation after the M. But M stands for the German word that, of course, I will butcher because that's my
And
nature.
people will call you out. In the
People will always call me
which
out.
is fine. We
But
love
it's
you.
Messsucher, which means rangefinder in German. So M is short for the German word for rangefinder because it is a rangefinder.
With that.
I do. Oh,
what it looks like.
I want this.
If you ever want to know what
show
the
me
guts,
give me the top plate first. Okay. Yeah.
it's gonna fit in there.
Yeah. Look, it just did. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
It's not from the same model, but
It's not. But we look at, and this is from an M9.
Close up. There we go.
This is from an M9.
The M9 hat.
It is. It's kind of cool, actually, to see the inner workings here. And if you look in the top plate, that's electronics. There we go. It had an optical rangefinder. So I'm going to do a little, I should not have put it in there.
Did you get it stuck in there? There you go.
A little surgery. So inside the top of any M camera, you're going to see something that looks like this. And this is the rangefinder mechanism from an M camera, which is very small and very delicate.
Yeah, that's why it takes so
very-
long to service these things. There's like
Very complicated.
lots of tiny little parts in there.
Is it like 1,000 parts or something?
I don't know the number, but
Yeah.
a lot.
Basically, the parts that are in a Leica rangefinder mechanism is very akin to a mechanical watch. Tiny little gears, tiny little parts, tiny little frame line mask. It's all.
I remember I sent like an M4 or something to DAG for what looked like this huge piece of debris in the rangefinder. Like
Yeah.
it was like a big blob of something.
and it's like.
And I sent it to him, and he's like,
microscopic.
"Josh, that's like the size of a grain of sand."
Yeah.
Like, do you have any idea how hard it is to get that out? I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't, but it's all magnified, obviously, so
Right,
we can
right,
see
right.
it. So yes, that's what M stands for.
M is rangefinder. And the first M came out in 1954. We actually have an entire episode on not just M. We actually have a 15-year anthology of digital M and all that, so you could always check that out.
Yes.
But basically, M, rangefinder. So when we have M lenses, those are rangefinder coupled lenses.
I'd like you to go to 25 since you did refill management, and I think it's pretty significant.
Okay.
So David, explain to us kind of the start and end, if you will, and maybe some of the logic of the type TYP, the type designations that we saw, but for
Well,
some
it hasn't really ended,
Okay.
technically.
Okay.
So when we had, let's use this one for an example.
That was the first.
Yes, because it actually shows it on the base plate here. So we're going to show that. And Jose, just tell me when I'm focused. Okay, I think I am. So if you look here, this says, it's a section MP, Leica MP type 240.
That's the base plate for an MP on an M.
Yeah, well, okay. Just disregard the MP designation. But you can see here type 240. And this was interesting because prior to that, the model that this replaced was the M9, although with, more camera attached to the bottom here. But yeah, the M9.
That's a very, very light
This is a very...
M9 weight reduction right there.
Yeah. Okay. So before the M9 was the M8, which was the first digital rangefinder. Before that was an M7, which was an analog rangefinder.
Yeah.
Before that was an M6. You get the idea. M6,
Yes.
M7, M8, M9, and then just M. Oh, sorry. Just M, type 240. The thinking here at the time was they like let me, how do I say
He's
this?
trying to be
Okay.
politically correct
I'm trying to
here.
be politically correct. I had
just spit
conversations.
it
They were
out.
like,
It's okay.
what is going on here? And they said, well, you know how Porsche has a 911? I said, yes. And they've had a 911, and the model before that was a 911, and the model before that was a 911. They're just 911s, but they're different type designations, right? You have a 991, you have a 993, a 996, 997. Those are type designations of Porsche 911s.
Basically, model identifiers.
And BMW does the same thing with F30,
Yeah,
30,
E92,
E92,
E93,
right.
et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the German manufacturers, car manufacturers, have type designations. And in watches, you have reference numbers, right? You have many Submariners, Rolex Submariners, but they're different type designations over the years. They just call it a Submariner. So like I said, we want to do that too, because it works for all these other premium companies. So it's just an M, and we're just changing the type number. And it confused the heck out of people.
Yes.
So they stopped.
Well, they stopped after about 10 models.
Right. So we went through an era where we had, for instance, on the S line, the first S was an S2. The next one after that was an S type 006. And then the next model was a type 007. We have an M monochrome type 246, which was based on the 240. We had the type 262. We had the ME 262, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, the M10 comes along, and it's like, just kidding, M10.
Yeah.
Like, what about the type number? Don't worry about the type number.
Yeah,
It's an
so,
M10.
so basically 2012 to 2017 was the type period where we had all these things.
Oh, the
And-
Q type 116.
Yes, and and generally the way that it's abbreviated in conversation or like an email is the letter of the product and then the number. So, for example, an M type 240 is abbreviated M240, M240,
Or MP240.
MP240. An original Q, which is a Q type 116, is just Q116. And last, I'll say
The SL.
SL type 601 is just SL601.
Yes.
Or M monochrome type 246 is MM246. So we use a shorthand, but it's important, really important, to differentiate between these things when you're buying, selling, trading, servicing, shopping for accessories, because you can't just say, I have an M monochrome. Well, there's three of those. And you can't just say, I have an M, because there's a lot of M's. I mean, you can, or I'll have to just ask you which one you have.
And just so you know, even though publicly they've sort of backtracked on this, you can see, if you look real closely, on the bottom of even the latest product, this is an M11. And if we look right here, you can see its type 2416. So
They still internally do.
right. So there's still a type designation, again, the same way that you would have a reference number for a watch.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. But now it's a lot easier because we have the M10 and then we have the M11 and here we have the M12. No, I'm just kidding.
You're not supposed to show that.
Oh, I'm terrible. But yes, so if you are shopping for one of those cameras or you own one, it is important to understand which exact version you have so you can buy the right accessories and all that stuff.
Yeah, that
Yeah, pretty covers that pretty well.
I think so.
What should we do next?
This is easy.
Okay, 18.
Yeah, so a lot of people want to know if we're talking about Leica R or Leica R lenses. R stands for reflex. It's SLR. We don't have it here. Well, we don't have a camera on this table, but from the R3 through the R9 was the R system. So that went on from mid-1970s, I think 1976 through 2008? Yeah, right before the S came out. Yeah. So from 1976 to 2008 was the reign of the R system, which was the reflex. And still, R lenses can be used on M cameras with a R to M adapter. They can be used on the SL with a R adapter L. And if you can find them, they've definitely been a little harder to get. A lot of people want us to do an R episode, but they're challenging for us to source the amount of R lenses.
That's the main reason we haven't done an R lens episode is there's so many R lenses and they're all so hard to get.
But you can hand me one of those.
Yeah. So if you happen to have one of every single R lens ever made and you want to loan all of them to us for a show, count me in. We'll do it. We'll do it in our show.
So this lens here.
What are you doing?
I don't know. Where's Jose? Where's Jose? Jose, you're over here.
It's like a dance. Because our close-up camera is being a little finicky today. That's okay. You can talk about it before you show it on the close-up camera.
So this is an R lens. This is an APRO macro Elmarit R. So based on what we talked about before, apochromatically corrected. It's a macro lens because it focuses close. And it's an Elmarit because it's an f2.8. And it's an R lens. There we go. So it's an Apo Macro Elmarit R. So it's 2.8 100. And yeah, so if you see R lenses, that just means it was for the R system or the reflex.
Want to talk about the mounts?
Sure, we can talk about the mounts real quick.
I don't have one of everything to show, but
Well, this
basically,
one, you got one here. And
that's a 3-cam.
That is.
So this is ROM. So in the world of R lenses, especially if you look at our website, you'll see designations like 2-cam, like 2-CAM or 3
Do you want to show that?
-CAM. You want me to? Yeah. And essentially, that's primarily dating the lens.
What era it's in.
Right. The 2-cam and newer will work on the R adapter M and the R adapter L. Anything older will not. Those are designed for the original Leica Flex SL.
We didn't talk about that yet.
Which we haven't gotten to. So in the world of R lenses, 3-cam is the most common and generally a lens you could use on pretty much any adapter that's current. The way they know it's 3-cam, get a close up here, is this little, there's like, see the silver piece here, and then there's like a little inner tab. That's the 3rd cam right there. So the 3rd cam and the 2nd cam sit next to each other, and then the 1st cam is over here. This little, it's hard to show this.
I see it.
So there's 3 cams inside. That's a 3-cam lens. If I grab this lens, this is what's called a ROM lens. And ROM lenses are the easiest to identify because they have no cams. They're simply electronically coded with these ROM contacts here to tell the camera what lens you are using and the aperture setting. So these are the most desirable, the most valuable. Lenses can be retrofitted by DAG sometimes with ROM contacts, not all of them. But a lens that is ROM from the factory is the latest version, the newest version, the most recent version, and the most expensive and the most desirable. So if you're shopping for our lenses, you generally look for 3-cam or for ROM. That's usually the most desirable. There you go.
Okay.
What's next?
Well, I think we just covered our lens episode.
Yep, that's it. Our lens episode is done. Check it off the list. All right. I feel very accomplished. what a weight off of my shoulders.
Well, let's talk about S, because that's another letter that we can talk about. So we have the S line here. So this is like a S, I think is a type.
That's 006, right?
This is a 006, yeah. Which we can tell because it has a type designation on the bottom.
That's right.
Okay. But they all kind of have the same body, from the S2, the 006, 007, and now the S3, because the S3 exists in the post-type period. So now we've gone from S2 to S3, even though there was 2 models in between. Don't worry about it.
It's exhausting.
Don't worry about it.
Actually, there was 3 models, right? Well, S2P, SE.
Okay, let's not get... But only 2 type designations of the technology inside. And, of course, we have S lenses. So this is a Summarit-S. So we have that dash is the system it's designed for. You also can use S lenses using an S adapter L on the SL system. So these are usable on the S and on the SL. This is an autofocus reflex system. So it's a...
We have a whole episode on the S
Yeah,
system.
we do. So it has a mirror box, it has a pentaprism, and an optical viewfinder. And this is a much larger than 35mm frame. So this is a medium format camera. And yes,
Watch our S episode.
Watch our S episode on that. But that's what S. And what does it stand for? Actually, I think the logic, go with me on this one.
Oh,
I
boy.
think the logic was that S was the next letter in the alphabet after R.
I hope it wasn't that.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
I mean, there's a Q.
Yep, QRS. Well, no, but that
But
comes
there's a T,
before,
but
yeah.
why?
But I don't know.
I don't
So
buy it.
let's not worry about
I don't
that.
buy it.
Okay.
Before we go on, anything in the chat, Jose?
Yes.
All right, why don't you ask us something?
Just to clarify, did you say that the 2-cam R lenses will not work?
They
with
will.
R adapter
will.
M?
Yeah, anything, what they call 1-cam or 3rd-cam only tend to be a little bit finicky. I have noticed it's kind of lens by lens, so if you're going to buy one that's not 3-camera ROM, make sure you can test it first or return it, just in case it doesn't work on the adapters. Because a lot of the lenses have been modified over the years, so
Yeah.
just be careful. But the reality is, any lens that's that old, our lens that's 2-cam or single cam, is not going to be very good on an SL system. Sorry.
You should be sorry.
I'm not sorry.
We're
What's next?
going next topic.
You have any more questions for us or no?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do, we talked about S, David, so why don't you go 39? This is about, we're sticking an S. You have one right here.
What is that? Oh, yeah. We should talk about that.
Talk about the S system.
Okay. So another thing in the S system that's specific to S, sort of, is CS lenses. So CS lenses were introduced a few years after the camera was introduced, after the original S2. So they rolled out lenses, and the lenses were, some of the lenses you'll see here. I'm just going to show a close up. Okay, this is an Apo Macro Summarit S. So that means it's a Summarit. It's a 2.5. It's an apochromatically corrected lens. It's a macro lens because it focuses close. And it's a CS designation. You see it here in the name, and then you'll also see it on the lens barrel right here after the focal length marking here. So it says 120 CS. And very often this would just be referred to as a 120 CS. Or if it was the 70, because if you look on the 70mm lens, you'll notice when I look on the side there next to 70, there is no CS. Although there is models that you can get that are a 70 CS, and it would have the little writing just like the 120 does. The difference between these two lenses is the CS has a central shutter. So there is a lens shutter here in the lens that has a little spot. It's the same exact optical design as a non-CS lens, but it's a little bit heavier because it has a mechanical
I mean, it's like
shutter.
100 grams heavier, so you're not.
It's 100 grams heavier.
You can't tell you're gonna feel the weight.
No,
difference.
you won't feel it. But it's a central shutter or a leaf shutter mechanism, which allows flash sync up to 1,000th of a second. There is a focal plane shutter in the S camera, but the flash sync only goes up to 125th of a second. So for studio photographers, for location photographers using lighting, that's very important to get a really high shutter speed. And this is one of the very first dual shutter cameras. And on the back of the S cameras, there is actually part of the power switch. You'll see where it says off, FPS, which is focal plane shutter, and CS, or central shutter. And then it, of course, says lens without central shutter connected. Well, yes, we know. So the camera is actually pretty smart that way. So you could actually choose whether to use the focal plane shutter, which has a low sync speed, but a high maximum shutter speed of 4,000th of a second, or you could use the central shutter, which will sync at any speed up to 1,000, which is its maximum. So the limitation of central shutter only is you cap out at 1,000th of a second, which is not great for bright light, shooting wide open, and that's why you have a focal plane shutter.
And just to understand, to be clear, you cannot use CS
Oh, yes.
functionality using the S adapter L on an SL camera.
Right.
The CS functionality specifically only works on an S camera, any S camera, S2 through S3.
Yes.
But you cannot use the CS functionality on an SL2 or an SL.
That's an excellent point, because a lot of people believe they can get a central shutter lens, put it on the SL.
It would be cool, but alas, it just doesn't have the capability to drive it. So.
It does not.
Let's do number 12. We skipped that for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We didn't talk about ELPRO.
you can talk about that.
Sure.
Because
So
you have
in,
it right there.
in the world of Leica, ELPRO, E-L-P-R-O, generally all capitalized, refers to a optical thing that's, I guess it's a lens, that screws,
technically a diaphragm.
yes, that screws onto the front of a lens to make it focus closer at the cost of distances that are not close. So, for example, this is the ELPRO 52. Now, we have a whole episode about macro where we talk about this. The ELPRO 52 is the current iteration of the ELPRO, which works on M lenses and some TL lenses and the Q. And again, it's just like a magnifying glass. I don't know if you can, let's see if this works.
Hey.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Wait.
Wow.
There we go. Look at that. It's literally just a magnifying glass that allows you to focus your lens considerably closer. Mm-hmm. It works best on lenses 35 millimeters or longer. Now, there have been 3 ELPROs of the modern era that I think about. The ELPRO 52, which is for anything with a 52 millimeter filter thread or smaller, which is this one. The ELPRO S, which is specifically for the S180, which happens to have a kind of a pretty long minimum distance. So if you're doing like studio portraits and want to get closer, you can do that.
But it doesn't really do anything on the 120.
No, it doesn't work at all on the 120, even though it screws on.
Yep.
And the ELPRO R, which is specifically designed for the 100 R lens that David just showed.
Right there, yeah.
So it goes from 1 to 2 to 1 to 1. Mm-hmm. There's also an adapter made by a third party to mount the ELPRO R on the 120S macro to make it 1 to 1 as well.
And there's the 60 ELPRO. Wasn't there?
No, that was a macro adapter that went in between.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the ELPRO 52 is the modern current ELPRO that most people know about. Mm-hmm. So if you see the term ELPRO, essentially it just means a close-up lens that is attached to your regular lens and makes it focus closer. Again, at the cost of pretty much anything other than macro. You can't even focus at 2 feet.
Yeah, you're sacrificing full range, but for close focus. And the nice thing about this, unlike what Josh just said, like the 60 had a macro adapter, which was more of an extension tube. So this is nice because you can take it on and off your lens without removing the lens, removing the spacer ring, or a close focus ring. And that's just a lens.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about the ELPRO is it doesn't have any light loss like you would with an extension tube. An extension tube, depending on the length of the extension tube in millimeters, will dictate how much light loss you have. But some pretty large extension tubes, you can lose 2, 3, 4 stops of light. And on the ELPRO, you lose no light at all, which is cool.
Very true. Cool. All right, that's ELPRO. Which
We already talked about this. We talked about
figure
Vario.
those out. You want to do? I can talk about number 27 pretty quickly. CLA.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Sure. All right, moving on. So another term that you'll see, at least on our website a lot, and that we throw around, you can pull it up while I'm talking about it, is CLA. CLA is kind of a blanket term. It stands for clean, lubricate, and adjust. And a CLA is a service performed on a camera or a lens generally, although sometimes it's like a flash or something. And what it essentially means is the item was sent to a service technician, whether that's Leica USA, Leica Germany, DAG, YYE, Golden Touch, etc., and serviced and calibrated so that it works like it did when it was new or as close to when it was new, depending on the age of the item, as possible. Sometimes a CLA is very simple, very inexpensive relative to the cost of the item. If it just needs a quick cleaning, maybe something very simple. Sometimes a CLA is extremely comprehensive and extremely expensive, depending on what's wrong with the item. I've seen CLAs that require lens elements be replaced or focus barrels be replaced that cost thousands of dollars. Not that common. That's more about if it was damaged. But
Sure.
essentially, what a CLA is getting an item that either had an issue or maybe wasn't working quite right or maybe just needed to be cleaned up, working as close to as it was when it came out of the factory brand new. Sometimes better, like in the case of the Tri-Elmar, the medium angle Tri-Elmar, better than new because Leica has certainly come a long way in their ability to make things work well.
Sure.
So if you look at our website, for example, which Jose will pull up now, here we go.
Oh, but put Josh on the screen.
You can see, hey, there I am. You can see we have a couple of, this is used M cameras just as an example, a couple of cameras that have been CLA'd. And the way that we do it from a terminology standpoint is if it says recent Leica CLA, that means it went to Leica customer care in New Jersey where it was serviced.
This one.
You'll see sometimes a CLA'd item has a 1-year warranty and sometimes it does not. If an item was serviced under an existing warranty, meaning it's still in the warranty period, you don't get any kind of warranty extension. It's just the warranty continues like it did when it was new. However, if an item is serviced outside of its warranty period, meaning we paid for the service, that's going to come with a 1-year warranty. So you can see some of these items that were CLA'd have a 1-year warranty,
And this one
some
doesn't.
do not.
Yeah.
You go to lenses,
Sure.
use lenses, and just to show that. Yeah, scroll down, everything with a Vetzlar. There we go. So for example, the 20 and Sumicron there in silver, that says recent Leica Wetzlar CLA. What that means was it was sent to the Leica factory in Wetzlar, Germany, and serviced there. I like to differentiate that because it is extra special to have a service done at the factory. It's just a lot more expensive and a lot more time consuming, and it involves shipping stuff overseas and customs paperwork and all that stuff. So
Interestingly, that was the lens we were talking about.
Yeah.
Where they only made 500 of these.
exactly, super, super rare, amazing. So again, CLA, it doesn't necessarily refer to a specific type of service, meaning like they did a certain thing. It's simply saying the item was sent in and serviced, and now it's working as good as it possibly can, given what's available today in terms of parts and things like that. So
Okay.
that is a CLA.
I like that. Now, what about so sometimes we'll talk about DAG, YYE, you mentioned those.
Yeah.
Now, those are abbreviations, but
Well, that's the name of the company.
Right.
Yeah,
So what is
DAG and YYE are third-party service technicians. So people who specialize in servicing Leica that aren't Leica, the corporate entity. They do great work. This depends on what you're going to send to Leica. Corporate customer care can't really service a lot of vintage stuff. They don't really do R lenses. DAG does that. Screw mount cameras, YYE is great for that. It just depends on what you have. It's case by case. What do we got?
How much is a typical Leica CLA?
There isn't an answer for that because it depends on what it needs to be done and how much you want to spend. If you want to have certain cosmetic things replaced, you could spend $300-400. You could spend $1,500. It's, when I have a camera CLA'd, I go all out because my objective is to make it as good as it can possibly be. And that sometimes is about changing internal stuff, maybe changing out a screen if it's a digital camera, changing out a base plate if the base plate's dented or scuffed up. So the CLA has both functional and it can even have some cosmetic attributes to it, depending on, again, what the piece is and how much you want to spend. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Great.
Sweet. All right, I'm going to ask you a question now.
What about this? Why don't we talk about that one?
Yeah, and I have them here. You can show them.
Okay.
David, tell me the difference between the EVF2 the Visoflex Type 020 and the Visoflex 2. What are they and what are the differences?
Absolutely. So
Not confusing at all.
not confusing at all. And let's even be maybe a little more historic. Look at some historical context, which is the original Visoflex and like going through the Visoflex 3. What was the Visoflex in historical terms?
Yeah, that was a system that allowed you to use not M lenses on your M camera. Basically, it gets pretty deep, but turning it into telephoto, macro, microscope stuff.
Yeah, it was like a system where
Had a pentaprism in it.
Yeah, pentaprism that would go in front of the lens mount with a spacer, and you'd flip the mirror up when you were going to use the camera, and it had a whole kind of like concoction. But you could use a bellows attachment or a focusing rail for doing macro work,
Pretty wild.
or telephoto work, or astrophotography with an M camera. In the modern iteration, Visoflex is not actually it's the opposite of an optical finder. In modern iteration, a Visoflex,
Well, that's not called a Visoflex. But
this one's not called a Visoflex. A modern Visoflex, which is an EVF. EVF stands for Electronic Viewfinder. And this is an EVF 2, which was compatible with the
M240.
240. Where did it go?
Right here.
With the M240. It was also compatible with the X system as well.
Yeah, the EVF2 works on the X2, the X Vario, and all the iterations of the M240, MP240, 246 monochrome.
Yes.
Doesn't work on the 262 because it has no EVF port, or the MD262.
Right. So this one has the EVF2 has what looks like an HDMI connector right there. And it may well be an HDMI connector, but no one's talking.
Yeah, the EVF2, the easiest way to know if a camera is going to work with it is if you see that port.
The external port.
Yeah.
Because when you went to the M10, you'll notice on the M10, there is no external video port underneath the hot shoe right here, right? So on the M10, the connectors are actually inside the front edge of the hot shoe. But going back to the EVF2 rather, so the EVF2, actually one of the cool things that I liked about this was that you could use the little button on the EVF2 to activate live view or not, which was kind of a cool little feature. I mean, yes, there of course is this
Well,
button.
it had no eye sensor, which is why you needed that button.
And there is this LV button here to activate live view, but this also activated live view, which is cool. And it did flip up, and it does have the diopter correction, which would always get moved. This is, I believe, 1.4 megapixels.
It's not great.
It's
okay.
serviceable.
It's not great.
You know what? It was better than what came on the M9, which was nothing.
Correct.
So the M240 is the first M with live view functionality, and this is the viewfinder that went with it. Likewise, again, the X2, the X Vario, which were very popular, used the same EVF. Moving forward, when we went to the M10 generation,
Well, this came out.
it actually did. Yeah, it came out with the X,
The
or the T rather.
T, the original T, 2015.
So the T, Type 701, came out with this, and then it was utilized moving forward and ended up being on the M10 as well for the entire M10 generation. This is they went with the old nomenclature, which was Visoflex. Instead of calling it EVF, like, normal people, they decided to call it a Visoflex. And this was in the type designation time, so this is a Visoflex type 020. It does have an eye sensor built in. They upped the resolution to 2.4 megapixels, and it also has a built-in GPS receiver, which is pretty cool, actually. And that one, if we mounted it in an M10, looks like this. And they all the EVFs do flip up, which is kind of a nice little feature of those. Diopter correction, again, is on the side here with little click stops. And it works okay. It definitely was a big step up from the EVF2. Now, to really confuse matters, when the M11 came out,
Oh, jeez.
when the M11 came out, Leica said, you know what? We're going to stick with the Visoflex naming. Awesome. And we're going to call it a Visoflex 2. Like, no, why? Wait, why? Well, what's a Visoflex 1? They're like, oh, well, this is a Visoflex 1.
No, that's a Visoflex Type 020.
But it's a Visoflex
Oh, boy.
1
Yes.
Type 020. And this is just a Visoflex 2, which, well, let's get a close-up well, first let me get a close-up of the Visoflex 2. So the Visoflex 2 looks very different. It's very rectangular, and it's made of metal where the other ones are made of plastic, which also means that the GPS transmitter, or receiver rather, had to be omitted because it can't go through metal. And it's lower profile. It's also higher resolution. This is 3.68 megapixel versus 2.4, slides into an M11 and looks like that. This one actually has click stops at 45 and 90 degrees, and it has magnets to hold it down. You can see the two magnets there, and it holds it down so it doesn't open up by accident. So definitely upgraded in terms of the construction and the build quality, and the actual image quality is really nice now. It's on par with the electronic viewfinder that's built into the Q2, which is quite good.
Now,
so this is very nice, but really Leica, EVF2, 020, and Visoflex 2, it's really confusing. So try to get the nomenclature as precise as you can, or just say, I have the viewfinder, the electronic viewfinder for an M240.
I want to talk about the Visoflex 2 for a moment.
Yeah.
When the Visoflex 2 came out with the M11 in January, like that indicated, we may see some future functionality with some variation of the M10. They didn't say what via firmware. That hasn't happened yet. So right now, the Visoflex 2 does not work on the M10, the M10R, the M10 monochrome, and we don't know
at the time of recording.
March 26th. We don't know what that functionality will look like. Will it have some letterbox cropping? Will it be? We don't know. So my advice is don't buy a Visoflex 2 to use on your M10 or your M10 monochrome.
Yeah.
Because number one, it won't work, and number two, if and when it does work, we don't know how well. I would buy a pre-owned Visoflex 020, which works perfectly and has GPS, which the Visoflex 2 does not.
Yes.
So to me, buying a Visoflex 2 it should be for an M11. And then one day, when there's firmware for the Visoflex 2 compatibility on the older models, which will of course be posted on Red Forum, we're not going to keep that a secret. That's a big deal
for sure.
We'll probably dedicate a good chunk of an episode just trying our best to show how that looks.
Yeah.
Either
something.
We'll find a way. So keep that in mind. Anyway.
So that makes total sense, right?
Yes. Let me ask you about what do I want to do next? I'm thinking. Oh,
we didn't do this yet.
What? We do what? Everybody knows what that is.
Everybody knows what this is. Okay.
The SL. Let's not. We've done like 17 SL episodes.
Okay.
I want to talk about number 28. Are you prepared to talk about that?
No.
No.
You want to talk about it?
I can talk about it.
Yeah, but I talked about I rambled on about Visoflexes, so I'm going to ask you.
Fire away.
Okay. What is the Leica 3D look?
Yes. So we talked about this. Well, we talk about this all the time. The Leica look or the Leica magic, and conceptually,
I think we talked about it in Fact or Fiction, didn't we?
I think so too. Conceptually, the Leica look means when you look at the picture, there's something about it that is different than what you would see with another camera manufacturer. Insert any brand here. What it means practically depends on the vintage of the lens you're using. In 2022, with APO and FLEs and stuff, what it essentially means is a very high level of micro contrast and a very smooth, controlled focus fall off and a very pleasurable color rendering, a slight vignette wide open, which is part of the lens's character. All of those elements coming together to give you the Leica look. Now, you could argue the Leica look is subjective to a point, although I've seen enough Leica images, not just ours, but people who are using the gear to know there is definitely something distinct. The Leica look tends to be more towards wide open aperture. I would say in general, the more you step down, the more you give up the Leica look in terms of the the fast focus fall off and the slight vignetting in the corners, and you're simply just getting better performance in terms of sharpness. But the Leica look isn't one thing. Because the look of a Noctilux wide open is very different than the look of a 75 APO wide open or a 90 macro wide open. So
very true, very true.
To me, the Leica look is more about looking at an image and going, that looks different. If you don't know enough about photography or equipment to articulate why, you still can see it and understand that something is different.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think anyone can say like, oh, I'm looking at a dirty window, and you open and you're like, oh yeah, that looks clearer. Like, maybe they don't understand the physics of why light is being refracted through a dirty window or an old window with, dripping glass, but they do understand what looks crisper and what looks cleaner and more lifelike. And I think that it's very hard sometimes to clearly define it and put your finger on it. Like Josh says, any one thing. It's not one thing. And a lot of people want to say, I think we covered this in our Fact or Fiction episode, oh, well, it's just the lenses. And that Leica look, it's just in the lenses. And you put that lens on any camera and you're going to get the Leica look. That's not entirely true. And on this other side of that, you can say, oh, well, it's all in the camera, so I can use any lens. It doesn't have to be a Leica lens, and I'm still going to get that Leica look. That maybe not be true either. But when you combine a Leica camera and a Leica lens, especially in a system that's paired for it, like an M system, where you have a lens like the 50 Apo Summicron with an M11, it's going to have that M look. If you pair an Apo SL Summicron on the SL, it's going to have that Leica SL look. And they're both Leica looks, but they're kind of unique unto themselves, which we've covered in the various episodes.
Yeah.
But there is definitely something when you have that combination and that marriage. And the same is true of a Q, where you have that lens that's specifically mated to that sensor. And it has that look to it.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's real. Can we define it? Not easily.
Yeah, I think when you look at an image shot with a Leica lens and you see something different about it, whether or not you can articulate it, what you're seeing is the Leica look.
Yeah.
And again, I did define some things, but it's the combination of the Leica lens, the Leica sensor, and the right technique. Because if you shoot with an Noctilux and it's out of focus, well, the Leica look just looks blurry. And I know this because I have shot many times with an Noctilux and have many out of focus pictures. So,
Ooh.
that's why I use an SL2S now with that lens, because I don't have
It's experimental photography.
Exactly.
Nice.
There's a lot of stuff in the chat. Jose, can you ask us some things in the chat, please?
All right. So, well, somebody asked about the Bokeh King.
The Bokeh King is, we talked about this extensively in our 35mm M lens episode.
We did.
It is the fourth version of the 35 Summicron, which has 7 lens elements in it. It has a very distinct bokeh. I don't know when the term came about. I think probably somewhere in between the Bokeh King coming out and the 35 Summicron aspheric that replaced it. It's not like it has the best bokeh of all the lenses. It's just a very distinct bokeh. I probably should have, if I had known someone was going to ask this, I would have brought some sample images, maybe the next show. But essentially, it just looks different than any other 35 Summicron. It's a pretty high-performing lens. It's extremely small. It's one of my favorite M lenses, pre-current, meaning a lens that's not current right now, because of the combination of small size and unique performance. It's very, very, very usable, meaning it's not like using a 3514 pre-aspheric Summilux that's like soft everywhere. It actually is quite good and quite distinct, and again, super, super small. So I think it's a fun lens to have if you like the focal length or you're just looking for something different that still feels modern. It has a focus tab. You can get a 6-bit coded. It's not impossible to use. So
Yeah, and it's really small too.
yeah, it's like the size of a 20 Elmarit or smaller. It's ridiculous.
It's kind of a pancake lens.
Yeah,
Ish.
it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet.
So going back to lenses and lens designation real quick, I think we forgot to talk about Summaron.
Well, the reason we didn't talk about Summaron is because it's a screw mount designation, with the exception, of course, of
This one.
the reissue, which is the 28 Summaron, which is a 5.6 in this case. But there's been other focal length 35 Summaron.
35 Summaron, but it
There was
wasn't
a 35
a 5.6.
Summaron that was a 2.8 and a 3.5.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the modern context, Summaron is specific to one lens, like the Thambar is, which is the 28 Summaron 5.6.
Yeah.
That lens is silver chrome, which means it has a brass barrel and it is in silver. So
There it is.
pretty sweet. I saw another question there about the E, right, Jose?
Let me check.
The what now?
The E, like M-E, S-E.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you that, but I'd like to give credit to the person who asked the question. If we
I
can
didn't even see it.
Can we scroll up?
Yeah.
Find it, Jose?
Lewis. Yeah, Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis asked. What's up with the E, M-E-S-E?
Sure.
They're meant to be cheaper. Never seen Leica committed to this model.
Yep. So E stands for essential. So an ME has always been kind of an essential M. So they had an ME in the 240 generation, which had no live view. it was essential. In other words, they got rid of kind of the fancier features. I don't know if there was anything like on the ME. It was actually
Well, the ME started with the M9 generation.
right.
The original ME came out in between the M9 and the M240, and it didn't
Right,
have a USB port, and it had the
right.
gray paint with silver accents. It was supposed to be a simpler M.
Yes.
And then it did an SE, which was the same camera with like that gray paint, which was kind of random.
It was the same camera, yeah.
The E designation almost feels like when someone at Leica product development is like in a certain mood, they're like, oh, we'll just do this. I will say the ME240 has one of the most unique, not special edition finishes
That's true.
of any current camera. It's not anywhere near the same finish as the original ME based on the M9. It's actually closer to hammer tone. It's a fascinating, slightly textured finish. If anyone watching this has an ME240, you tell me if you agree. But I think it's one of the coolest.
Yeah.
And they're quite hard to find these days as well.
And the ME from the M9 generation was like a
It's like a battleship gray.
Yeah,
they call it, yeah.
Oh, the anthracite, what is it called?
yeah. It was almost like
they called it that, but
it was kind of it was in between.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah,
quite
yeah.
anthracite, but it had a texture to it.
Yeah.
So the MEs, what it's supposed to mean is essential. It's a pared down version. And historically with the MEs, they've been, and also the SE, it's been a less expensive version. So essential.
Yeah.
It's like the iPhone SE. Same kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
The iPhone SE is a less
Did
expensive
Apple steal
iPhone.
from Leica in that case? I think so.
Ooh, lost it.
Something tells me that they didn't.
Yeah, I doubt that. Any other questions in the chat, Jose?
Super Angulon?
We talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about that. 21 Super Angulon. Rewind. Okay, let me ask you, David, about number 36. I think that's probably useful.
Sure.
I'm going to rephrase it a little bit.
Okay.
Explain to me, how do I interpret the naming scheme of Leica filters and filter sizes?
Sure. You didn't bring a box, did you?
No, but I have filters.
Yeah, okay.
This is yeah.
So it's first of all, there's a little confusion over what the difference is between 39 millimeter and E39. And the difference is there is no difference. E39 just designates a 39 millimeter filter thread. So if we look at...
Well, the reason I think we don't see it, and I like this logic, is that you don't want to have two different numbers like that on a lens. You don't want to have 50 millimeter on a 50 and then 46 millimeter if it's a 46
Right, and you
millimeter
can
filter
actually
size.
see, let me show this actually. Yeah, so if you see, and that's a good explanation, I like that. So if you look at the front of, let's say this 50 Summilux, you'll notice that it's on this side, you'll notice 1.450, that designates the focal length, 50 millimeters. And on this edge, you'll see E46. And that designates the filter thread diameter, which is this right here.
Is there a big spot on that lens, or is that a reflection? Oh no, it's just your button. It's like, what the heck is that?
Oh, it's my shirt button. There you go. It's like kind of a cool effect.
Yeah, it's-
Ooh,
oh,
okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so you'll see on the front of these lenses E46. Sometimes, like the 135, it'll be on the side where you see E49, like that. Okay, so that says E49, and that's only because there is no room to print on the front. Yeah. So all the naming designation is around the front edge here on the lens shade, but it says right there E49. So I think that follows suit with all the rest as well. Yeah. So even the larger SL lenses,
Where'd our close-up camera go?
I don't know.
It ate itself. That's okay.
Jose, it ate itself. Anyway, you'll see here it says
Weird today, but...
it says E82 on the front of an SL lens.
Yeah. So
So that just designates the filter diameter in millimeters, and the filters tend to match. So certainly like a filter. So this is an E46 filter, and you just have to match an E46 to an E46.
Exactly.
Which is like this.
There we go.
It fits. But I think Josh is correct by designating that the E in front of that number, it allows you not to confuse it with the focal length of the lens.
Right, because if the 50 lux, like I said, was engraved 46 millimeter as well as 50 millimeter, we're like, wait,
is that 46?
Is that 46 or 50? So
yeah, that's good. That's good.
I think that's the reason they do that. So E, just take out the E and put an MM, and that's the filter size.
That's it.
Pretty straightforward. On the filter node, what about lenses like the 21 and 24 Summilux that don't have filter threads? They take something else. What do they take?
They do. So
I didn't bring one. I'm sorry.
You didn't bring one?
No.
Yeah. So those take. So for instance, like a 24 Summilux takes a Series 7, and a 21 Summilux takes a Series 8. How they relate to millimeters, I don't know, but they're threadless filters that are designed. I could kind of, sort of, just demonstrate using a different lens. If you look at a wide-angle lens here, and you'll notice that this filter hood, or not filter hood, the hood itself is cut out to accommodate a filter. On the 21 and 24 Summiluxes, and actually, well, I don't want to say that out loud, but I would have brought the 21 Summilux, but it's somewhere else right now.
It's far, far away.
Far, far away. So the Series 7 and Series 8 filters, they drop into the backside of the lens shade, and there would be a little shelf, little retaining shelf to hold it in so it won't fall through. And then once it's there, you actually flip the lens over and screw it back in. You can't flip it over the other way because it'll probably fall out.
Yeah.
So that you kind of screw it in this way. Imagine this was a 24 Summilux.
Right. So
that's how you do it.
when you have a wide-angle lens where the front element is flush with the edge of the lens and there's no room, or some older lenses that just don't have a filter thread on them, or they have an unusual size filter thread,
Like that old 35.
like 35 pre-ASPH, then you have series filters. You can think of them as drop-in filters. They're just literally round discs. There's no threading. They just stick in. Yeah, that's a series filter.
Yeah.
Sweet. You want to talk about number 34 while we're on the topic, since I have both?
Sure.
Well, or I can talk about it.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So I'll keep this super quick because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, so let me ask, okay, so a lot of people know about a UV or UVA filter. First, is there a difference in a UV filter and a UVA filter? And also, Leica has a UVA2 filter, and then they also had UV-IR filters.
So I can't.
What's the difference?
Well, when the M8 and the M8.2 were around, there was a flaw in the sensor design where they had excess sensitivity to infrared light. So to correct this, Leica issued UVA/IR filters, which were designed to cut out that excess infrared light before it could hit the sensor. Those filters are specifically designed for the M8 and the M8.2. You do not want to use that on any other camera unless you have some weird creative objective in mind. And the way to tell that a filter is UV-IR is, if I can catch the light just right, it has, there you go, like a red-green hue to it if you look at it in a certain way. See that? Whereas a UVA filter is totally clear. If you have a UVA-IR filter on your camera and it is not an M8 or an M8.2, you should take it off and replace it with a UVA filter, which filters out only UVA, which I think A is just a particular wavelength.
Yeah,
Now,
UVA, UVB.
The reality is every modern lens that Leica makes and every modern sensor that Leica makes is already filtering out any UV light that could potentially interfere with the image. So you don't need specifically UV filtration. What a UVA filter's real purpose is to protect the front of your lens. Leica, I don't remember when this was, they now have what they call their UVA2 with the Roman numeral 2 filters. And what that switch represented was a switch from a brass ring to an aluminum ring and some reformulation of the optics of the filters. So you generally want to have a UVA2 filter. The exceptions are when you, in my opinion, when you have brass lenses, it's cool to try to find one of the older brass filters because the finish is slightly different. We're getting real nerdy here, but
A little bit.
the point is, what I really just want to emphasize is if you have an M8 or an M8.2, you need UV-IR filters. If you do not need, or nor should you be using
Should not use.
UV-IR filters. So if you're not sure, look at your lens, look at your filter. It'll say UV/IR right on the side.
IR is for infrared.
I don't know if you can see it.
Well, not when you put it off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. You can see it says UV-IR.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to see that. You want to just see UVA, like that. Okay. Anyway, filters. Let's.
Okay.
We have like time for one more thing. I think.
Yeah, I think we covered the filters. pretty well.
Any questions in the chat, Jose? Before we dive in further, we're doing good. I'm not paying attention. Doing a bad job.
Not exactly about what we're talking about, but
What is it?
how good is the resolving
we should talk
power
about
of the
this.
16-18-21 tri-Elmar?
Oh, well, we covered
Yeah,
that
wide-angle
in the
episode.
wide-angle lens episode. Yeah, we did. No, we talked about it.
Yeah,
So
we
if
did.
you're curious about how the weight stands up to the 21 Super-Elmar, 21 Lux, etc., we have an entire episode dedicated to wide-angle M lenses where we went into
Lots of detail.
Great detail.
But I think we should definitely talk about that.
Let's finish with that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question, and then we'll finish off unless there's any chat questions.
Sure.
Explain to me the difference between L mount, SL mount, and TL mount.
Sure.
Go.
So we always have to use the history, right? So Leica came out with the T Type 701, and they came out with a series of dash T lenses, right? Were they the very, very first ones were dash T?
Yes.
And then for various legal reasons, they had to change the name. They couldn't call it the T because there was a pre-existing T mount somewhere in the annals
We don't know
of
the details,
photographic
but
history.
it's okay.
All we know is the T was then renamed and rebranded the TL, and the mount was rebranded the TL. So when you see an initial early adapter where you have like an M adapter T, M adapter T will work on an SL.
Right.
It's very confusing, but M adapter T
Yes.
is the same thing as the current M adapter L.
It just was produced before they changed the nomenclature.
was.
That's all.
Yeah, so this was purely for legal / marketing reasons. They changed it from T to TL, and then after that, because that was in 2013, and then in 2015, the SL Type 601, the first one, was introduced, and it's featured the same mount as the T system. So the T system, which is same as the CL, which is even more confusing, right? So we have a CL, a TL, and an SL. The commonality between all three now, because we're kind of harmonized, is they all have the same L mount. So the L mount is the commonality between them. The CL is the sort of iconic design, but in an APS camera. The TL is the more modernistic touchscreen interface, unibody aluminum, but also with the same L mount, and those also APS. And we had an entire APS episode. You can check out those cameras there. And then the SL is the full frame professional mirrorless using the same L mount. And we can take, and let me do a quick close up on the lens actually. So this is an 18 Elmarit TL 2.8 18 aspheric. So this is an 18 millimeter 2.8 TL. So this is an APS sized lens, and I can mount it on an SL because they're both L mount lenses. I can also, let's do this. I can also take this lens, which we've already talked about, and this is a Vario Elmarit SL. So this is a full frame L mount lens, and I can mount it on the CL because it also has an L mount. So these are interchangeable between the camera systems, even though this is an APS size sensor and the SL is a full frame sensor. Obviously the cameras are pretty different in size, and so are the lenses. I think we brought, for an example,
There you go.
yeah, just to show the relative size comparison. So this is an 11 to 23 TL, which is equivalent to a 16 to 35 in full frame terms, which is this. This is a 16 to 35 SL.
Okay, show them on the close-up. We'll get it positioned right. There we go. Slight difference in size there.
I'm trying to bring that down. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
look.
slight difference in size, and yet in terms of aperture, this is a 3.5 to 4.5, and this is a 3.5 to 4.5. So these are actually the same maximum aperture with the same equivalent focal length, but one is for APS and one is for full frame. And there's clearly a size and very much a weight difference between these. I know Josh is a big proponent of actually using the 11 to 23.
I wrote the review of that lens.
Yep. On
SL2.
the SL2.
Super cool. And the cool thing about this lens is it's a 67 millimeter filter size, which is the same as the Apple SL primes.
Yes, it is.
So you go out with a couple of primes and one of these, and you've got some awesome coverage,
You're cut down from 47 megapixel to 20,
which is fine.
which is fine for most things,
yeah.
and you get an ultra wide.
Sweet.
So it's pretty cool. I, of course, favor the 1635 myself, but hey, what are you gonna do?
All right, we should.
So that kind of covers it in terms of L mount. So just when you look at the names of the lenses, whether they're TL, CL, SL, their commonality is the L mount.
And we do have an entire episode on L mount lenses.
And remember
FYI.
that you have the M adapter L, which can adapt M lenses to here. You also have the M adapter T, which you might find in the used market or your cupboard, and that still works. The T is interchangeable with L in this context.
We did it.
I think we did something.
It's pretty late, so we're gonna.
Oh wow! Yeah.
We gotta stop. Anything last minute in the chat, Jose?
No.
No. Well, good. Well, this was fun. I think for us, the ability to spend some time defining a lot of the shorthand and lingo that we use every show is really nice. It also helps us get our head straight, and I think it will help you guys understand why we talk about certain things in certain ways and how to better parse out the nonsense that we spew out every couple of weeks. So
Speak for yourself.
that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the show.
It wasn't too
We
over
are
the top
back.
nerdy.
We are back. I will tell you.
It was pretty nerdy.
It was pretty nerdy, yeah.
We're back soonish. Well, no, I guess. I think like 3 weeks, maybe. I'm trying to see. It's
Something
not-
like that.
Somewhere in April.
Yeah, I think at the weekend of the 16th.
Oh,
Yes,
right
the 16th.
Yeah, because I leave like 2 days after that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be out of town, then you're gonna be out of town. So April 16th is our next show. Make sure you subscribe and hit all the buttons and clicks.
I'd say that. Yeah, click all,
sorry.
click all
I'm
the
just saying,
things.
so specifically subscribe so you know when we're gonna go live. David will give you the whole spiel.
Yeah. I'll give you this spiel.
Why don't you sign us off?
Sure. So, well, first I want to just mention again. We mentioned at the top of the show.
Oh, Greenland, yes.
Yeah. I've been traveling more for workshops again, which is great. Getting out back in the field. We just came back from Iceland 2 weeks ago, and I saw a couple people in the chat actually who were on that trip. So thanks, guys. We had a great time, and it was fun, and we survived, which was great. Pictures were not half bad either, and I didn't drop any cameras.
I'm proud of you.
So that's a big win.
You did
That's a
good.
big win.
You did good.
We are heading to Patagonia next in April, right after the show. But coming up after that, we are going to Greenland, and we do actually have one spot remaining. I'm just going to pop this open one more time so people can see.
But if you want to sign up for Greenland, you do it right here. So show them one more time. I think someone had asked about that. How do they sign up?
Oh,
So you go to leicastormiami.com, then you go to events, destination workshops,
yep.
you go to Greenland, and you click the sign up button, the
Click
big old red
click
button.
old red
I'm
button.
pointing like they can see me pointing. All I'm doing is
I can point. I can point.
So-
click the button. Yeah. So we have one spot remaining for Greenland, and if you have any questions, you can just click the button to down here. Oh, it is far down. You can click this button down here to email us any specific questions, and we'll let you know details of the trip. But it should be pretty awesome, and we're looking forward to it. And we'd love to have you join us, somebody. I'll be leading that with my co-leader, Peter Dooling, who is often here, but right now he's on vacation with his family in undisclosed location B. Having a good time.
That sounds like fun. I want to go there.
It sounds so good, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little PSA there. We like I said, we'll be back on the 16th. So if you like this video and you enjoyed it and you learned something, give us a thumbs up. It definitely helps the channel. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, or maybe that we didn't talk about and you've heard a term thrown around, drop it in the comments once the video is in archive form, not in the live chat, but drop it in the comment section, and we will look through those and answer them. Be sure to subscribe to Red Dot Forum Camera Talk, Red Dot Forum YouTube channel. We are aiming to get to our 20,000 subscribers soon, so please help us do that. And make sure to click the notification bell so you know when we go live or post new content. Also, you can check out red.forum.com on the web for the latest Leica news, reviews, technical articles, and all that. And we just have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles there that you can learn more about Leica. As well, we are on Apple News as well, so you can subscribe to us there. Again, just look for Red Dot Forum. And I think that's it.
I think that's it.
I think we did it.
We did it.
Big thanks to Josh for his unending nerdiness and deep knowledge of Leica
Keeps me going every day.
and lens hoods. Big thanks to Jose for putting up with the two of us. And and again, a big thank you to you guys for tuning in and indulging our nerdiness, because without you, there wouldn't be us. So thanks a lot, and we will see you in a few weeks. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of the weekend.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.